The intention of justice is to see that the guilty people are proven guilty and that the innocent are freed. Only we have a problem here.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are taking a look at this case from a psychological perspective.
Fun. Everybody was having a good time.
Does Brian Albert strike you as the kind of guy who's always having fun? No. And here's a news flash for this judge. Mental health professionals have solutions.
They made an arrest. They got the guy called Danny.
It was like a mix between sadness and anger because that's the moment for him when he really started to believe that his mother was involved.
The only corresponding records in the other databases are from previous days.
There is a huge psychological component to what was going on here. And according to this group, Brian Albert Jr. gets like the most celebrated birthday hour of anybody ever. Like every 30 seconds, someone's like, "Happy birthday!" John totally seemed like such a cool guy.
John makes me like the booze.
Somebody jumps in as a journalist, draws attention to it in a light that is not good for the prosecution. I mean, and there are serious allegations of corruption in the DA's office and the state police.
Oh my God, it's not like his 21st birthday. Hi, loophole lawyer. How are you?
It feels great. It feels good to be back.
I'm going to go with the seahorse because certainly I've gotten a lot of love from everybody today, which feels nice.
You are very, very loved. And I can't believe we get to spend your birthday with you. Happy birthday!
Text messages read back as if he's the aggrieved party.
Hold on. Have each of you been called murderers?
Who wants to be the one to give Matt the bad news?
I wanted to prove or to demonstrate.
I don't know where the dog was. I didn't hear any barking. Her name is Sunny. She was named after Santino Corleone.
Hey, hi, everybody. There's my Johnny. Hello. That's my Johnny.
Sunny barks if you walk by my window and sneeze. You're not really going to deny this, are you?
It's so weird. It's like the Inside Out, upside down. Narnia.
I would get at some point in a timely fashion and then turn it over.
Know if we had it enough, or we had it all, I should say. Kill me. Not having any observable or detectable electrical activity would be asystole.
Means death. 3 separate tab IDs. The thing he had to encourage her to do was not to testify.
You know, and Julie Albert responds to the text message from John, and she goes, "My biggest fear in life is ending up on Turtle Boy."
Stop it.
Oh, you never seen that? Oh, I got it.
You're not going to like this, though. You're going to disagree with me on
Just say it. I like the
disagreement.
Conflict.
Okay.
Yeah, the disagreement.
I'd say the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
People are terrified of him. They're absolutely terrified of him. And how do we know that? We know that from Mega Motion. Just another day for me, right? Which means it was just not an ordinary day for somebody else. Just when you thought you were out, pull you back.
Karen Reed plots. She fabricates a conspiracy.
I am just a person who likes to understand. That's going to increase the likelihood that we're going to take some action.
Here she is.
My sister Jillian, yes.
Oh, it's funny. But then he's got part of his shirt untucked. His back pocket is kind of hanging out.
He has to buy that. So, he has to buy that. So.
And showing solidarity, you can see them there.
It's about getting justice for John O'Keefe. There clearly is an issue of integrity.
How dare they?
Justice for all. Only we have a problem here.
Yes, we do. Welcome, everybody. This is the I Don't Belong Here show. It is our Wednesday night live, 10 p.m. Eastern show. How are you, everybody? Welcome to Wednesday Night Live. Hi, everyone. It's nice to see you guys. Interesting show planned for you tonight. So I have been doing some homework. Actually, I've been obsessed. So I went from one obsession to another obsession because that's most of you maybe don't know this about me, or maybe you do, but that's my personality. Like, I'm an obsessive person. And so when I get a question in my head, when I want to know something, when I want to know if somebody's telling the truth or not, then I get like fixated on it, right? So I learned my lesson the hard way from Vince 2 weeks ago, I think, about when he was like, hey, hey, what do you think about this? Do you think she's telling the truth? And that's what got me drawn into the Koenig case. So now I'm going to be a lot more careful going forward, taking somebody else's suggestions or questions more seriously before I jump in, because that wound up taking my life for a week, maybe more. Quite the interesting case that was. But now I've been investigating this story out of the Bahamas with Lynette Hooker and the Sailing Hookers. Fascinating case, really interesting people. And I think that's what I'm learning, right? I'm like really getting to know these folks because of social media. They had all of this stuff on all these social media outlets, from YouTube and TikTok and whatever. So I have been deep diving into those folks and their lives. That one's a tough one, I got to tell you. The more I'm learning about the hookers, the less I want to be involved in it. That's how I feel about that. So I've been deep diving over there, but then I knew we had Brian Higgins again tonight because I want to follow through. It was so hard when we tried to do the Jen McCabe analyses. We just never got it done. I mean, it just took so long, and then all these other things came up. So I want to stay true to the commitment and get it done. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to sit down earlier today, and I'm going to really get his deception tags on paper. Let's do this the right way. And, let's really go through it more seriously. And then I realized, oh my God, this is, oh my God. Then I like reacquainted myself with Brian Higgins, and I was like, oh no, this is massive. Like, I forgot about the Karen Reed stuff because I had gone on these other tangents, right? And so then I'm back here and I'm like, oh, this case is so heavy. The Karen Reed stuff is so heavy. It's so intense. I came off the Ariel Koenig and Gerhard Koenig saga, and then I'm in the hookers' lives and their saga, and nothing comes close to the Karen Reed case. It's just... There's like, you just take this like hit emotionally the second that I reconnect with what's going on, right? I'm like watching the beginning. I wanted to review what we did the first time because I didn't really remember where we left off. And it's just like, oh, Brian Higgins, right? Oh no. So I did take some time today, and we're going to go over it so that all of us can really be following along with this analysis, because it's massive, right? This is Brian Higgins. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's Brian Higgins. He is the guy. Everything in this case, when you really think about it, starts and stops with him. He's the guy at the center of who killed John O'Keefe. There's no way around it. I wish there was. There's no way around it. And one of the things you're going to see in part today, linguistically, is why. Why, for me personally, why I can't get myself away from Brian Higgins, and why it's really his testimony that ultimately makes it impossible for us to drop it. Like, it's impossible, right? Because Jen McCabe, of course, there's more deception in her testimony maybe than anyone that's ever testified in the history of time. But it's not as important deception. It's not because she killed John. None of us say what we want about Jennifer McCabe. Nobody believes that Jennifer McCabe was directly involved with the murder of John O'Keefe, right? Nobody, because she wasn't. But Brian Higgins is at the center of it. And there's a few incredibly important moments. And again, this all came back to me. The seriousness of this came back to me today as I was preparing to do this tonight, sitting there going, oh my God, oh, right. There are some moments in this testimony that make it impossible for me to remove him from the center, right? And I say that, the reason I'm saying that is because there's been two distinct theories when it came to this case, with the exception of Karen Reed having any involvement. We're not even going to include that because that's not a legitimate theory. That is, somebody somewhere has that theory, but it's been disproven scientifically. It's not a valid theory. So, anybody can say anything about anything. We're talking about legitimate theories. There's two legitimate theories that have been presented in this case. One was the initial sort of rumor mill that started with Steve Scanlon going to David Yannetti's office. This predates Alan Jackson. This is really like Karen was arrested, and within 48 hours, before or after, I can't remember at this moment, he walks into Yannetti's office, right? So it's the first theory, really. And that is Brian Albert and his nephew somehow were directly involved, and that Brian Higgins was in a support role. And we could go through the details, but they're kind of not that important, right? So there is maybe evidence for that. You certainly could pull evidence to make that argument. However, there are moments in Brian Higgins' testimony that make it impossible for me to accept that theory fully, because of the relationship between Brian Higgins and Brian Albert, because of the indicators that Brian Higgins gives to us about who's the top and who's the bottom, who's the authority, who's the more submissive person, and who's the more dominant person in their interaction, right? That is what makes it impossible to take Brian Higgins out of the center of the theory of what happened here. The second theory, of course, is that, Brian Higgins was somehow directly in an argument or in some kind of a conflict with John O'Keefe. It's centered around Karen Reed. One way or another, he's directly involved. It's an accident. He accidentally, they get into some kind of a scuffle. It results in John hitting his head, losing his life almost immediately, and then them making drunk decisions, right? Brian Albert being at the center of the decision-making cleanup process. So those are really, those are the two kind of distinct theories. You could probably blend them. We could all day argue about who's doing what and, et cetera. Colin Albert, is he there? Is he not there? Whatever. But at the end of the day, those are essentially like, is he a supporting character, or is he, Brian Higgins, a directly involved? And so today, we are going to be taking a much closer look at that. And I think with the strategic lens that I'm going to give you guys to look at this testimony through, it changes everything. I mean, it really changes the way that you think about this case. At least it did for me. It's Brian Higgins, who is at the end of the day, the guy that changes the way you look at this case forever after. And his testimony is what does it. So it's so important, right? It's such an important testimony. Let me get to some of you guys here before we keep going, before I get too far away. Denise sends £5, says it's 3 a.m. here in the UK. Oh, well, I am so honored for you to be here. It's 3 a.m. I should be telling you to go to sleep, but I get it because I would be doing it too. Thank you for your utterly fantastic analysis and independent thinking. Well, thank you, Denise. You are amazing, and I thank you so much for being here with us and being a supporter, even though you probably should go to sleep. But like I said, I get it, right? Because that's how I am too. I struggle to turn off. That's for sure. So I really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. And Brenda sends $12, says Brian Higgins should be rotting in jail with a bunch of other drunks who never meant to kill anyone, play drunken games, win prison prizes. Brenda, 100%. I am with you 100%, right? I mean, I'm okay with voluntary manslaughter. Like, cool, 10 years is good, whatever. I mean, there's probably some other charges though that we could throw in there. Um, I'm with you 100%. Well said. Absolutely. I think I'll tell you, I think this Canton race, this political race. Now, I obviously do not get to have a vote. So I'm not going to get to vote on who becomes the district attorney in Norfolk County. But man, I'll tell you, that is one important race for all of us because, I mean, this is obvious, but because if there's a new sheriff in town, if somebody like Adam Deitch gets elected in that community, we might actually get some justice. But if somebody who's just another shill like Michael Morrissey, one of his people, one of the McAlberts basically, ends up taking over that office, then we're never going to get justice. It could be another however many decades until we see any legitimate investigation into this case. That is so sad. But that is how much power that office has, right? Because they are the ones who ultimately decide who gets charged and who doesn't. And it's their police officers, the Massachusetts State Police, that come out of Norfolk County's office directly that would be the ones to theoretically be bringing the charges, unless, like we saw or we are seeing now with the Sandra Birchmore case, unless the feds get involved. And listen, it's the same people, right? I mean, it's the same police officers. There's so much overlap between the Sandra Birchmore case and the Karen Reed case. It certainly is possible that as they are digging through the evidence in the Sandra Birchmore case, that they have or already have stumbled upon evidence to support something coming eventually in the John O'Keefe case, right? So, I mean, it's not impossible, but certainly it's much harder if the Norfolk County DA's office is operating against you. So if you can work together in support of a case, that would certainly, go much further. And there's a lot more to come. I mean, there's some things I wanted to show you, and hopefully we'll get to that, that I always mess around on X because there's a lot of great content on X, a lot of content creators that throw stuff up on X. And there's some interesting stuff about Sean Good. There's a lot more that has yet to even scratch the surface on him. I believe Karen Reed was scheduled to give her deposition today or yesterday. 14th? Is that today or yesterday? I believe she was scheduled to give a deposition either yesterday or today. So depositions are underway there. And I know it's going to be a while before we get those depositions, but man, can you imagine how exciting that is going to be? It's just going to be a lot of fun to get all of this additional information. So much exciting stuff, right? So there's a lot is going to come out. And look, the Karen Reed case is not going anywhere because number one, there are these 3 civil cases, right? And counting. We saw obviously Brian Tully put in his resignation. Good riddance. Thank God. This is someone who should not be a police officer, obviously. And, look, there's something else I think it's probably a powerful lesson to share with you guys, right? Bias is so strong. Like, it's so strong. And when you're a police officer, you have all this authority. You're in an office with other people who think exactly like you do. I remember working in a therapy office for years. We had no idea that we were all thinking exactly the same way. Like, we didn't know. We were young. We were like mid to late 20s. And we did not realize that as therapists, we were all exactly aligned, had the exact same philosophies. We just didn't know that there was anybody else out there that, therapy-wise, that had completely different views until I left that office, went to a different office, and all of a sudden was like, oh my God, like, I'm not in Kansas anymore. This is a completely different way of thinking about this work. And it was eye-opening. It was like, oh, I didn't even realize, like, we were in our little bubble, like our little cocoon, supporting each other. It was like this little love fest every day. And then I got into a much different situation and realized like, oh, the culture where we were was kind of very biased. I mean, we thought in a good way because we all appreciated that specific type of thinking. But that's what happens. So you get into a police force where everybody is just supporting the same BS. And then it just becomes the norm. And there's no outliers because outliers can't tolerate being in that space. So, of course, a case like this comes along. The initiative from the higher ups at the Boston police, at the Massachusetts State Police, at the local police, the Canton PD, everybody wanted Karen Read to be guilty without ever even knowing what the situation was. So, right, what were these cops going to do? And listening to these interviews, the higher ups from Brian Tully, there's 2 interviews. I can't remember their names. Copenhagen or something is one of them. The other guy, I forget his name. They're not that important. The only thing that I think is important that comes out of those interviews is that they're exactly the same. I mean, they have the exact same perspective, the exact same view. Their thinking was like, who cares about these stupid texts, right? It's like, oh, well, obviously, the apples don't fall far from the trees. So clearly, for anything to change, everybody, it's going to have to be everyone turns over. And for that to happen in Norfolk County DA's office, it's going to have to be the DA himself, right? That brings in a whole new culture, a whole new way of thinking. So it's dangerous though. And, it's strong. I mean, look, that's how we are. We're built to, when we believe something so strongly, we are built to find it and see it and believe it and double down on it. And the Karen Read case is like the greatest example of that, right? I think some of these guys, like Brian Tully, probably still thinks Karen Read is guilty, right? Michael Proctor, Yuri Buchanan, these guys still think that right now we're all loons and Karen Read, there's so much evidence, even though those guys planted the evidence, right? Even though if you look at the taillight pieces that they found originally during the CERT team investigation, they're not even the same. They don't even look the same as the ones that wind up in the final, in court, in the final display of the taillight pieces. It's absurd. It really, really is. The whole thing is absurd. Ginger sends $10. She says, Brian walks dog. Brian Higgins car with plow in driveway. Drunken fight. Dog attacks. John falls on plow. Remember, Sergio's Truth Revealed said there's something about the driveway Higgins doesn't like. Absolutely. And we're going to get to that today. So today I'm going to start at the waterfall. And then we're going to go through really, hopefully, the party, right? And the party is the most important part. But one thing that we really have to pay close attention to when I'm going through this today, what happens before John and Karen show up? Because the last thing that I was investigating before I got completely derailed with all these other cases was what was going on at the house before John and Karen show up. And this is so important because whatever's going on, nobody can tell you anything about it. Nobody. None of the witnesses can testify to what was happening. And the example that I always give is if you think of the last, gathering or party that you went to, maybe like a holiday party or even just like a get together with friends. If I asked you in the first 20 minutes, what did you do? You're going to be able to say, it might not be exciting. It might be super boring. Like, oh, I said hi to my cousin and she told me about the new car she just got. And, whatever. It might be very, very unimportant, but she'd be able to give me a play-by-play of the first 20 minutes, especially if it ends up being the most important night of your entire adult life, right? So you'd be able to give me that play-by-play in your sleep. However, when it comes to the group of people, when they returned from the waterfall, until John and Karen end up in front of 34 Fairview Road, nobody in that house can give you more than a sentence about what they were doing, right? We were laughing, talking, and listening to music. Some version of that. Laughing, talking, listening to music. Then, when you try to ask more questions about who was where, and everybody gives you a different answer, right? So, and it's just deception filled up and down. And so the question that we have to then ask is, well, why would it matter what's going on before they even get there? So to your point, there is something so important about the story about the Jeep and the plow, because all of that is going on before John and Karen get there. So why is this rehearsed? Why is any of this important? It's only important if it is. And that's part of why I think this part of his testimony is so important. Right. So let's jump into this, because like I said, I will forget forever. All right, so let's take a look. All right. Here we go. So before let me make this bigger here. But I love this. I mean, yeah, I think some version of what you're saying, Ginger, is right? Like, the question is how and why. I mean, so to your point about the plow, for example, he could have fallen and hit his head on the plow, possible, or they could have used it for some other reason. They could have used the plow for evidence in a different way. We don't know. Right? But there is something, certainly. I mean, there's something about the Jeep too, right? Because his Jeep wasn't parked in front of the house. I mean, we know his Jeep wasn't parked in front of the house. So why is he telling us the Jeep is parked in front of the house? Why does that Jeep need to be parked in front of the house? That's not where it was. It's not where it was because we know that other witnesses didn't see a Jeep. It's also not where it was because if you've been to this house, you know there's no parking on the front of that house. You can't park there. That's the road. It's not, it's not like a really wide two-lane roadway where there's even room to put a car. You'd have to be literally up on the grass to be able to be parked in front of the house, like legitimately parked. It's one thing to be pulled over on the side for a few minutes while Karen is parked there, or while Heather and co are parked there. But to just like get out of your car and walk into the house and leave your Jeep there, it doesn't even make sense. So we know it's not true. Why is he telling us it's true, right? So of course it matters. It obviously must matter, right? Because he wouldn't say it if it didn't matter. So, I mean, all important stuff. All right, so I'm going to start this, and we're going to start right before the waterfall. So here's some things that we have to all keep in mind, and this is going to be a group effort because, yeah, I mean, there's so much here, guys. It's not even possible for one of us, for one person or two people to catch it all. I mean, it's massive. Everything he's saying is important, and here's why. So the first thing we have to know about Brian Higgins is he wants to appear honest and helpful. Like he wants the world, he wants all of us, he wants us to think that he is an honest man, that he would do anything he could to help John, right? That's the story he continues to put out there. Like, I would have, done anything to help him. And, the same song and dance that we heard Brian Albert singing after after Karen's verdict. I'm a police officer. I would have taken a bullet for John O'Keefe. Same thing. So he wants to appear like he's being honest and helpful, but everything about everything he says and does is strategic, right? It's purposeful and pointed. Like he is saying and doing everything he's saying and doing for a reason. So it's not like random, because the whole thing is designed to be strategic in his mind. So he thinks that this is like he thinks there's a way for him to appear like he's being honest and helpful. So he doesn't want to seem guarded. He wants to seem like he's answering honestly. The problem is that he can't do that. And that's what we're going to be picking up on. What you're going to be seeing is this effort, this constant struggle that he has to want so badly to seem like a helpful, innocent person, but he isn't. So he can't give us the right answer. He can't give us the honest answer. This is the rub that Brian Higgins has. It's why his testimony is so difficult and painful, and why, when we go through, we really do see so many different indicators. The question is, what do they mean, right? Of course. But that's why, as we go through it, there's so much deception. So a couple of things to keep in mind about his baseline, right? He speaks like a normal person. It's shocking. Once we get into this, you won't be able to, we'll have to go back for me to prove that to you, but he doesn't speak with repetition normally. He gives direct answers, right? Like, he can speak like a normal guy. It's shocking, I know. So what we're going to be listening for, a couple of really important things. We're going to be listening for extra information, anything that he gives us specifically that Lally doesn't ask for. Because we're going to start with direct. So we have to start with Adam Lally, which is sort of tragic because I have very strong negative feelings about Adam Lally. Just think he's such a snake. But so what we want to be listening for is, when is he offering information that Lally doesn't ask for? Anything that he offers that was not directly asked for, he wants us to know. He thinks that we need to know that. And if he wants us to know it, that means it is essential for us to pay attention. It means it's probably hiding something, because the whole point of this testimony is Brian Higgins is hiding something, but he doesn't want to seem like he is, right? I mean, that's what makes this testimony so crazy. So we're also going to be looking for the standards, right? Repeating pronouns, be paying attention for whenever he's thinking or talking about John, because the sensitivity goes, he just starts panicking. It's pretty funny to watch. Remember this, time is a huge problem for Brian Higgins. He's going to be avoiding giving us any direct timestamps as much as possible. So be listening for that. And then finally, we want to be looking out for his rehearsed statements. Now, we know that they all have them. We know that they've obviously gotten together, tried to get on the same page, but they'd all botch it, right? It's like the family photo, right? Like Brian Albert has them looking at the Suns picture in the Marines in the Suns room and Jack's room, and the whole thing. Nicole is looking at pictures of Brian Sr. when he was a Marine. They all get it wrong, but nonetheless clearly have rehearsed this. So we are looking also for those rehearsed statements. He has like buzz phrases, and we're going to be listening for those. Okay, so anything else that we need to think about before we get going? Let me just check to make sure. No questions, nobody else. Twigs is here. Hello, Twigs. Twigs says, Sam, you need a crime board. It will help tie your analysis to the testimony, sort of like mind mapping. The problem with that, Twigs, is if I had that, it would be insane. Like, nobody else would be able to follow it but me. It would be so disorganized. I need like an organized person to like filter for me. Otherwise, it wouldn't make any sense. But I like the idea. It would just take me so long to do because it's like crazy in my head. All the time. Twig says, I'm planning. Oh, you're planning a trip to Canton? Oh, that's so exciting. Yes, you have to hit me up. Let me know when you're going to be in this general neck of the woods. I'm obviously not that close, but we have been talking. There's a group of us that have been talking about, once we heard that, the other team got together and like did like a big weekend in, hotel, we were like, oh my God, what a good idea. We should get like everybody together and do that. Do like a weekend party, right? How cool would that be? It would be so fun. I don't know that we'll be able to keep it a secret though. So my guess is that, we won't be able to keep it under wraps the way that they were, but I'm okay with that. I doubt that any of those guys are going to want to be hanging out with us. Yeah. So plus we would do it in Boston. Like we would do it not on their territory. But oh my God, I can't wait. You got to give me more info about when you're going to be around. That would be awesome. Let me know when it's going to be. Hopefully you'll give me some time to get up there and then maybe we can hang out, grab some coffee. I don't know that I can actually be like headed into the pizza shop anymore, but I'm happy to tool around Canton. It's fun. It's an adorable place. Really, really cool. If you haven't been to Canton, it's just a really cute town for sure. It's also really cool because, if you've been thinking and eating and sleeping this case for so long, I mean, it's crazy. It's definitely really interesting to be standing in front of 34 Fairview. It's so surreal. You're like, wait, this is the house? Like my sister's like, yes, that's the house. I was like, no, this is it. She's like, yes, this is it. And you'll see, Twigs, make a mental note. You'll see when you're standing in front of 34 Fairview, you'll see that you couldn't park your car there. Like there's no way you'd be able to leave your car because two things. One, it's a really narrow road, but also it's on a curve. It would almost seem like a dangerous place to put your car. Like you would almost be like, is it okay here? Is it going to get hit? Because you're on like almost, it's not necessarily a blind curve, but it kind of is a blind curve. So it would be like, should I leave my car here, especially in bad weather? So I don't know. Check it out. Definitely let me know what you think too. All right. So let's get into this. Let's see what we can extrapolate. I'm going to keep this guy handy so that we can bring it back if we need to. And let me pull up Brian Higgins. We're going to be using the trial channels footage of this case. The trial channel is amazing. If you haven't had a chance, check out the trial files. The trial channel's got a new channel called the Trial Files, and it's so awesome. It is where I got the footage of Bev, Judge Beverly Canoni, for the last video that I did on her. All of the cops, their audio is there, so definitely check that out. All right, here we go. Let me make this bigger so that we can all see it better. There we go. All right. Now, you're going to note that the speed is slightly slower. I did that on purpose because it's like really difficult to catch all of the indicators at full speed. If it's too slow, I'll speed it back up. I don't think it's too slow, but let's see. If it is, I will speed it to normal.
Where they were.
Okay.
Now, with respect to
turn the volume
Brian
up.
Albert, how would you describe sort of your
Can we hear it okay, guys?
around this time of January 2022?
He's a good friend. He's a co-worker. I had been working closely with his unit.
Let's see.
I'd say he was a good friend.
And through that sort of work and your friendship, were you familiar with his family as well?
Yes.
And
How
so
do I do
when you
this?
came
Like
over
this?
to the area where Brian Albert was,
No.
his wife was there, correct?
Yes.
And who, if anyone else, was there that you were familiar with or that you knew when you came?
So it would have been
You can hear, okay.
Brian Albert. It would have been Nicole. I believe Caitlin was
All
there.
right, let me just rewind this a
where
little.
they were.
Now, with respect to Brian Albert, how would you describe sort of your relationship around this time of January 2022?
He's a good friend. He's a co-worker. I had been working closely with his unit. I'd say he was a good friend.
All right. One of the most important things that Brian Higgins says, maybe even throughout the entire testimony, is this right here. So I'm going to play this again. He's asked about what his relationship is with Brian Albert. And like I said before, This is so important because it's going to give us clues about the dynamic. And Brian Higgins is a little unique. I'm thinking back to all the witnesses that we've ever seen in any case. Most of the time when a witness testifies, they're doing it from memory. So when they're giving their current testimony, it's coming from the time in question. So in other words, they're putting themselves back in the moment from whenever they're testifying about, and then they're kind of in that perspective. They're in the past, kind of recalling it as though they are the person they were then. But Brian Higgins almost doesn't do that at all. The entire testimony is kind of theoretical. It's all present looking back. And that completely alters the way he's testifying. And he never, or very, very seldom, I'm trying to remember. I'm not sure. I have to go back through the whole thing again to say. But from what I can remember, the vast majority of his testimony is not from the past. It's in the present, looking back. So it's being informed by the current moment that we're in. That's really important because that means the present and his current situation is informing everything he says. And if we know that, it means that we can use everything he says, understanding that it is being informed by the present. So that may not make sense right now, but it will as we go through this for sure. All right. So he is asked specifically, what is your relationship with Brian Albert like in January of 2022? So let's hear this one more time.
January 2022.
He's a good friend. He's a coworker. I had been working closely with his unit. I'd say he was a good friend.
Okay. So he's a good friend once. Then he's a coworker also. Then he's a good friend again, right? So he's sort of tripling down on, I'd say he's a good friend. And you'll know when you watch his body language when he does it, it is clear that he means it. Like both shoulders go up. He is aligned with that statement. Means that he believes it when he says it. So that tells us that looking back from the current perspective, when he thinks back to the relationship with Brian Albert, he's a good friend. Okay, so that's important. We really want to put a note in that and continue to just monitor for evidence of that relationship and what the dynamic is between him and Brian Albert. Because again, if we can suss that out, it gives us the ability to be able to say, well, okay, which one of these two is doing the other the favor? Now, maybe they're equal. Maybe they have equal liability in the death of John O'Keefe. But if they don't, if one has, the edge over the other, well, then that's indicative of one having more liability, more responsibility than the other. That's what we're kind of trying to suss out. So put a pin in that. We will come back to it, I promise.
And through that sort of work and your friendship, were you familiar with his family as well?
Yes.
And so when you came over to the area where Brian Albert was, his wife was there, correct?
Yes.
And who, if anyone else, was there that you were familiar with or that you knew when you came?
So it would have been Brian Albert. It would have been Nicole. I believe Caitlin was there.
Whoa. All right. So this is exactly how we know that he's not testifying from the present, because he's saying it would have been. So it's like he's filtering what he's telling us about that night through a filter. Because when you say it would have been, that tells us that he's not speaking about this from memory. He's not putting himself back in that night at the waterfall and going across the table. All right, it was Caitlin. He's not doing that. He's saying, okay, who am I supposed to say was there? So he's filtering, right? It's like he's testifying with his intellectual brain, not his working memory. He's not pulling stuff from his memory. It's insanity.
Brian, Kate and Elbit, Brian's daughter, Chris Elbit.
Wait a minute.
Was there. Elbit, it would have been Nicole. I believe Caitlin was there. Brian, Kate and Elbit, Brian's daughter, Chris Elbit, his wife, Julie. There might have been another couple, Matt McCabe and Jim McCabe.
And as far as the McCabe's were concerned, how familiar were you with that?
Casually.
Now, at some point you come in, you join the group, is that correct?
Yes.
And how would you describe sort of throughout the entirety of the evening or your time at the waterfall, how would you describe sort of the mood or the demeanor of the group within the bar?
It was a good time.
No arguments or anything like that you observed from anybody that was present over the
No.
course of?
No, it was a good time, and there was a band.
All right. So note that he is testifying about the time before John and Karen arrived, because he just went around the table and he said who was there, right? So he's telling us, okay, this is when just the Alberts and McCabe's, maybe there was another couple there. So he's talking about the time before Karen and John walk in. He says it was a good time. He puts both of his shoulders up when he says it. Pretty matter of fact, straightforward, no big deal. Okay. So then what happens when we introduce John and Karen into the mix?
And if you recall, about what time was it that you left?
I would say right around when the band was wrapping up. So it was probably closer to midnight.
Now, prior to that, at some point between the time that you arrived and the time that the band's wrapping up and you're preparing to leave, who, if anyone else that you were familiar with, came into the waterfall?
John O'Keefe and the defendant.
And just to be clear, when you're referencing the defendant, what is her name?
Karen Reed.
And just to be clear for the record, do you see Ms. Reed in the courtroom today?
I do.
Did you identify just as where she's seated or an article of clothing that she's wearing?
She's seated between attorneys Jackson and Yannetti.
Just ask the record reflect identification of the defendant by the witness.
Yes.
Now,
Wish we could have been in the room to see this in real time.
How long had you known Mr. O'Keefe?
Maybe a year, a little over a year.
And do you recall how it was or where it was that you first met Mr. O'Keefe?
I believe it was actually the hillside.
And how often would it be that you?
It's interesting the way he says that. I believe it was actually the hillside. He's just reducing commitment, and like that's a surprise. It shouldn't be surprising. It's strange the way he says that. I'm not sure why that matters, but it's just interesting.
Saw Mr. O'Keefe or socialized with Mr. O'Keefe?
I would see him at the hillside.
And as far as
okay, I would see him at the hillside. So you see now sensitivity is going up. And that's because when we think about what now he's being asked to recall his relationship with John, which centers around being at the hillside. And remember the text messages between John and Brian Higgins, they were friendly, right? They were all fun and games. They were almost flirty, like man flirting, until Karen starts texting Higgins independently. And then the text messages after the Patriots game between John and Brian Higgins, as of the very next morning, completely ceased. There's no more text between the two of them. And now we know that Brian is texting Karen. So that's sort of like the breaking point, you know, if you want to think about the relationship between John and Brian Higgins. And of course, he's carrying all of that into this testimony, which is why I'm sure all of a sudden he's thinking about the hillside. And now we're seeing redundancy. We're seeing him repeating words. And I'm sure that will continue.
Familiar with what Mr. O'Keefe did for work?
Yes.
And what were you familiar with him doing for work?
He was a Boston police officer.
And
I know,
with
it's so
reference,
annoying.
To Mr. Reed, how long had you known the defendant?
It would be about the same time, or as long as.
Is that too loud?
And so roughly, what was your understanding as far as the relationship between Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. Reed?
They were dating.
Let me know how the
Now,
volume
with
is.
reference to
Oh.
the occasions as far as between Mr. O'Keefe and
I know that the volume is tough because Lally basically whispers and like refuses to speak into the microphone. This is important because he's going to be talking about how he understands the relationship between John and Karen. So this is interesting.
to Mr. Reed, how long had you known the defendant?
It would be about the same time,
And
or as long as.
And so roughly, what was your understanding as far as the
Oh,
relationship
that's
between-
interesting. That's so interesting. Does everybody see what he did there? Do you see the correction that he made? That's funny. So he asks about his relationship with Karen, and he says that it was about the same time, but he doesn't like that because of what he knows about his relationship with Karen and his relationship with John, right? So then he changes it and he says the same amount of time as, to clarify. That's actually funny. I don't think I've ever caught that before, but that's interesting. Like he doesn't, you know, you can see how careful he is right now. And let's think about this honestly, right? Like if Brian Higgins has nothing to do with the death of John O'Keefe, like nothing at all, he is just a witness. I mean, I know we all know he isn't, but let's say that he was. Who the hell cares? Who cares about your relationship with Karen Reed? Who cares about your relationship with John? Like, it sucks that you guys were not on better terms when he passed away, but like, you weren't involved. So who cares? The fact that he is this protective of people knowing about his relationship with Karen, evidenced by the fact that he feels the need to clarify this level of silly detail, like who cares? He cares. Look at the look on his face. Like he cares. Right? He absolutely cares. And he wants it to be understood that like he doesn't want any of us to be carrying suspicion about what was going on with him and Karen. It's the kind of thing that you see only when somebody has something to hide. Because if you don't have anything to hide, who the hell cares? We're talking about murder. Who cares about your flirty, stupid text relationship with Karen Reed, right? Unless it's important.
Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. Reed?
They were dating.
Now, with reference to
So then he's asked, how do you characterize the relationship between John and Karen? And he says they were dating. And I think that's fascinating, right? Because is that how you would characterize the relationship between John and Karen, that they were dating? I mean, I guess it's not false. He's not wrong. But it seems like something he has definitely thought about already. Like he thought about what to say there. And that is exactly the way that Karen wanted him to think about the relationship. That's what she was ultimately saying, right? We're alike. We're both single, you and me. I'm not married. You're not married, right? So it's just interesting to hear him in hindsight.
The occasions, as far as would there be occasions typically where you would see Mr. O'Keefe without Miss Reed, or you would see Miss Reed without Mr. O'Keefe, or were they essentially together when you saw them?
I would say more often than not, they'd be together.
And did you have occasion to see them at other sort of social settings outside of the hillside?
I went over the house one time before the end of Patriots game.
Now think about how he says this. I went over the house one time for the end of a Patriots game. Right? So he won't even say I went over to John's house. And think about that. He won't even say I went over to John's house. Like, this is a guy who clearly carries a lot of guilt because he can't even tell us that it was John's house that he went to. He has to say the house because he knows that he was there to see Karen. He wasn't there to see John. That he wouldn't have been there if it wasn't for Karen being the one to say, come on, come over, whatever, right? And there's such heavy guilt about that that he can't even say John's house. You know, it's, again, none of this should be important. And the only way it is important is if it's important to what happened to John. And so that means it's important. It's crazy.
So if I could take you back, let me ask you this. As far as how would
Absolutely.
you describe your relationship with John O'Keefe?
I considered him a friend.
And how would you describe your relationship with Miss Reed?
I considered her a friend as well.
In the course of time that you knew them, did you have occasion to get their contact information and have communication with each of them through their phones?
I had John's telephone. John and I had exchanged telephone numbers.
All right. Now this is wild. And Adam Lally knows that he's going to have to present how many text messages? 90? I don't even remember how many there were. They're not, you know, I don't know that they're the most eventful sequence of text messages in the world, but there's a stack, right? He knows he's going to have to take him through. And he just asked, did you have the phone numbers of both of these two? And he's like, oh, me and John exchanged phone numbers. So somehow in that moment, in Brian Higgins' mind, he just like walled Karen off and answered this question with like, either he just lost his head for a second, right? I mean, what was the plan here? He was just going to lie about not having Karen's phone number? Like, this is bizarre. This is wherever he just went in his mind. It's like he lost it a little bit. I don't know. Let's watch.
And with reference to those communications, were they texts, were they phone calls, or varied?
Oh, they would be text.
And as far as the text communications that you had, you received this contact information, you texted, someone replied. How did you know that that was John O'Keefe that was replying to you?
Well, I had him saved in my phone, John O'Keefe. I don't know exactly where he gave me his phone number, but I knew it was him.
Now, on that evening, taking you back to the waterfall, January 28th into January 29th, do you know about what time it was that Mr. O'Keefe and the defendant came?
Lally just blows past it.
It would have been, I think, between like 11 and closing.
And do you recall
Would have been
where you were situated in reference to the table when they came in?
So I think I was at the high top bar area, the high top in the bar area closest to the bar.
What the hell just happened there? I mean, it's like he like lost his mind. Like, I mean, the level of anxiety just spiked like to the roof with this guy. He was speaking coherently. Now he's asked about when they come into the bar. That comes into his mind. By the way, let's not forget John O'Keefe, the very first person that he walks up to that night at the waterfall is Brian Higgins, right? Gives him a big hug. First person, he's like, hey, and he walks right over to him. They don't spend much time together again after that. He ends up spending most of his time, oddly, with Brian Albert. But he goes right over to Brian Higgins. While Karen makes her way very slowly and subtly around the bar. But it takes the entire time they're there, right? So this guy knows that. Of course he knows that. You think he doesn't remember that John went right to him the second he walked in that bar? So the anxiety just shot way up. And I think that's part of what makes this part of his testimony really interesting, because we've all examined the waterfall video very closely now. We know exactly what happens at the waterfall. We can see it with our own eyes. And so to see him now get completely crossed up at this question, I mean, it's an interesting place to get sideways. And he just got knocked sideways in terms of his language. That's what it's revealing. Like he's kind of lost it a little for him. It's crazy.
Closest to the bar.
Here, let's hear it again.
I think I was at the high top bar area, the high top in the bar area closest to the bar.
And when
English
and Miss Reed came into the waterfall, what, if anything, did you observe? Where did they go when they first came in?
So when they first came in, I believe they may have initially went in, like, veered off in different directions. I recall that she opened her coat and took a drink out of it. I should say a glass.
All right. So this is wild. So this is what I meant when I said you're looking for information that he interjects that was not asked for. So Lally asks a question about where they went when they got inside. Where did Karen and John go? And rather than tell us the truth, which is actually, oh, John O'Keefe walked right up to me. He walked right up to me. He beelines it right to me. Gives me a giant hug. First thing he does. Instead, he says, oh, I believe they went in two different directions. And he starts telling us about Karen taking a drink out of her coat. And you can see a look on his face. He starts to get like angry almost, right? You see the whole tone of his face change. It's insane. Can you please redact Lally's voice? It's hilarious. I wish I could. If we could just redact him altogether, that would be awesome, prop man. That would be amazing. Hey, Adam Lally is the worst. He's such a snake. But this is what it why did he just tell us that? So this answer has several it's there's many reasons for it. Right? On its face, it looks like obviously he wants to distract us to tell us about Karen's drinking. Okay, sure. But really what he's doing is he's diverting our attention away from the fact that John O'Keefe greets him. John O'Keefe walks into that bar and goes right to Brian Higgins. I have to believe that Adam Lally watched the waterfall video. Right? I don't know why it is that that fact is only now sort of sinking in as I watch this. But that is so significant. And this guy is telling us about Karen pulling a drink out of her coat. I promise, first of all, if that was something that he and Lally had planned for him to bring up, it would have come a different way. Lally would have gotten to it. So this is deflection. This is him actively deflecting from telling us that John walks into that bar and goes right to him. Right? So he's deflecting. And that's why there's the look of like anger on his face, because he wants to make sure and take our attention away from him, John giving him basically a big like kiss on the lips. Like he's the one person in that bar that night that gets a really like a big greeting from John O'Keefe. It's crazy. Like it makes me angry thinking about it now.
What, if any, observations did you make of the glass that Ms.
What an asshole.
It was a tall glass. It looked like a clear liquid in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And at some point, did you come to find out where Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. Reed had been prior to coming to the waterfall?
Who cares?
Are you familiar with another establishment in Canton called C.F. McCarthy?
Yes.
Is that a place that you've been to before?
Yes.
Now, as far as the glass that you saw,
You got to be kidding.
with reference to the waterfall and/or C.F. McCarthy's, what, if any, observations did you make of it?
Well, that it wasn't from the waterfall.
And what makes you say that?
Well, she walked in with it and took it out of her coat, but it wasn't consistent with the type of glasses that the waterfall had.
And so let me just ask
Wow.
one question.
I mean, this is just absolutely deflection. This whole line of questioning is so silly. I don't know why it's even allowed. It's ridiculous, right? Like, he's going to be able to tell us what C.F. McCarthy's glassware looks like. I mean, if he can do that, then I think Brian Higgins has much bigger problems, right? I mean, that's like, come on, Adam Lally. What, are you serious? So this is deflection. It is actively deflecting from the reality that when these two walk into the bar, the first thing that happens is John O'Keefe goes right up to Brian Higgins, right? And Brian Higgins is playing like trying so hard to get all of us to pay attention to the Karen pulling out a glass out of her coat, which is completely irrelevant. Like, who cares whether Karen has a glass in her jacket or not, right? It's just, God, how absurd. How absurd. It's so stupid. Fiona Houston 2140 sends $20 Australian, appreciating all your dedication from Australia. And Fiona, we appreciate you so much. Thank you for your support and greetings in Australia. Yay, another Aussie. Got a bad feeling. Hi, Got a Bad Feeling sends a super sticker. Thank you so much for your super sticker. Got a bad feeling. Twigs says, Brian says he and John exchanged numbers to hint to Lally to ask or introduce to the jury that he did not. Yeah, absolutely. Right. So, and that's right. Exactly. So Twigs, what Twigs is saying here is Higgins is implying that the way that he got the phone number, like that him and John exchanged on the up and up, rather than Karen, surreptitiously getting his phone number behind John's back and then reaching out to him. You're absolutely right. That is the reason why he makes it a point to make them distinctly different. But in doing that, because what's going to happen, and there's like some foreshadowing here, what's going to happen is he then Brian Higgins tries to deny that he has Karen's number up until the point when Lally has to say, like, did you send a text at like 11:30 or whatever, 10:30? I forget exactly the time that he sends the well text. I'm well. So you're exactly right. Somehow in Brian Higgins' mind, because they had made this distinction between John and him exchanging phone numbers on the up and up, and Karen getting his number and reaching out to him, secretly, I guess, he like took it all the way and like rode that, in other words, I have no part in this relationship because Karen, got my number and started reaching out to me. I didn't exchange numbers with her. That's very, very, very true. Spot on. Yes, 100%. Fiona says, I wish gay Jeff was on the stand. Me too. God knows. Me too. Where is gay Jeff when you need him, right? Where is gay Jeff? Oh my God. Hello, Mark sends $9.99. Hello. Who has to bring charges up on Higgins or whomever? Can we get anything from the next Karen Reed case, or will someone have to bring it up separately? I mean, Norfolk County, the district attorney's office, I guess, right? Because it would have to be the person in charge of the jurisdiction, and in this case would be, Canton. So it would have to be the district attorney. It would have to be Norfolk County, or the police would have to do an investigation, unless, like in the Sandra Birchmore case, where they didn't do it. And so I think it was Sandra's family. I mean, there was public outcry for Sandra too. There was that podcast that really brought a lot of attention to the case, and that case, Sandra, happened in 2021. So it was just really a few months before John's death, I believe. I'm pretty sure it was like 6-7 months before. And the feds stepped in because they weren't doing it. And listen, Michael Morrissey, up until months. I mean, it took the feds having a press conference and announcing that they were looking into this case because it wasn't a suicide, for Michael Morrissey to literally forward an email to Brian Tully with a question mark, like, is this true? Could this be true? Like, this was really news to him, which just shows you how totally out of touch Michael Morrissey was with what the hell was going on in that office and with his police. Had no idea that Sandra Birchmore was, a questionable call. No clue. And so, those emails with Morrissey really showed you how just, I don't know if ineptitude or just unaware, just like a shill. Like he's just like, I don't know, like a poster child. Like he didn't do anything in that office. He's just a politician, which is crazy. It's so upsetting. So, it's a good question, Mark. I guess my question would be now, who is running that office now? Because Morrissey, I don't think ever really was anything more than, I don't know, a puppet for somebody else, probably. Whoever gave him the most money, I don't know, because he didn't do anything. He really just didn't seem to be aware of what the hell was going on. So who's making the calls? Who is making the calls in that office for real? I don't know. It's a good question. And who is now? Because the group that was there under Michael Morrissey is completely broken up. Now, is Fanning still in that office? Maybe Fanning is still there, because I don't remember ever hearing that he was rehomed. Fanning is somehow, I got to tell you, that guy, I don't know what he's doing right, but Fanning seems to have flown kind of under the radar the whole way. And really, he's been at the center of all of this, right? He's at the center of the Sandra Birchmore case. He was at the center of the Brian Walsh stuff. He's at the center of the Karen Reed case. He was the guy that was in charge of the security for the jury. He's been all over these cases, but somehow skated any problems whatsoever. At least as far as I know, I don't remember hearing anything about him being moved out of that office, which is not great. Which is not great at all. Okay, let's get a little bit further here.
That. So when you say it wasn't consistent, what was it about it that made it inconsistent with glasses in the waterfall?
I believe it was a tall glass and kind of like bubbles on the side of it, so to speak, like the design.
Now, after you make those observations, at some point over the course of the time that you were at the waterfall and they were there as well.
Wait a minute.
Have a conversation.
So Adam Lally, think about this. If you're a juror, Adam Lally is making what Brian Higgins was focused on in the moment when John and Karen come into the bar. Lally is insinuating that what Higgins is aware of is Karen's glass, the glassware that she comes in with from some other place. Like that's what Brian Higgins is thinking about. Oh my God, she brought in a glass from somewhere else. Because that is what matters to Brian Higgins, according to Adam Lally.
Conversation with Mr. O'Keefe.
I did. I don't know that if it was initially when he first came in, but I did have a brief conversation with him as to the content. I don't recall what that was.
Oh, this is wild deception. Like the balls on this piece of garbage human being. Did everybody just hear what he said? First of all, we had like 6 eyes in a row, so this is totally deception. I mean, he completely is totally lying. So even if I didn't know what he was lying about, he's lying. But we also know what he's lying about, right? So Adam Lally here is asking, like, did you have any conversations with John? And listen to his answer. This guy, balls on this guy. What a piece of garbage. Just, and the fact, see, here's the thing. The fact that he's lying about this, that is so incriminating. Like, do we get how incriminating it is that he can't tell us the truth? You can't tell us that John walked right in and gave you a hug and like, you don't remember that? Of course you remember that. It's the last time you ever saw that man. Well, it's not. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. That's not true. It's one of. You absolutely remember that. And it's on video. The whole world has seen it. And he's just full of shit, as full as shit could be about this. Absolutely full of shit. Unbelievable.
Over the course of the time that you were at the waterfall and they were there as well.
I don't know that if it was initially when he first came in, but I did have a brief conversation with him as to the content. I don't recall what that was.
Mm. I did have a conversation as to the content. I don't recall what that was. So he's absolutely full of shit. He knows exactly when they spoke, and he does recall what they spoke about. So this is double bullshit for Brian Higgins here. It's sad and pathetic, but
Small talk, fair to say.
Greetings.
Greetings.
And with regard to Miss Reed, during your time at the waterfall, what, if any, conversations did you have with her?
I did not have any.
Now, at this point in time on...
Okay, so we also know that this is a lie. So he says, I did not have any. I did not have any. So it's uncontracted. Brian Higgins uses contractions. And it's not true because he did. He absolutely did. And he will tell us eventually that he does. So it is a lie because we know it's not true. We've seen them communicating at the waterfall. And he knows that they communicated at the waterfall. Nobody knows better than Brian Higgins. So he knows it's a lie. But also, he eventually tells us that they communicated when he's under cross-examination and Alan Jackson is grilling him about those interactions. Okay, let's play it again.
This date, did you have Miss Reed's cell phone information?
I did not.
At the time that you were at the waterfall?
No.
Do you recall sending a text or...
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you repeat that question again?
At this time, I know we've jumped around a couple of dates, but at this time that you were at the waterfall on the 28th or the 29th, did you have Miss Reed's contact?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And at some point over the course of the evening while you were at the waterfall, did you send a text to Miss Reed?
I did.
Did you recall what the substance of that text was?
I think it was something like, well.
And do you recall event as far as that text message or why you would send that?
To be honest with you, it was, I guess you could view it as a flirty text.
Now,
All right, so this is really interesting, and we have to take a look at this more closely because this is coming off as deceptive. So we really have to know, if this is not a flirty text, then what does it mean? Because the language here indicates that Brian Higgins does not believe the well text was flirty. If it's not flirty, what is it? I don't know. I'm asking you guys. I don't know. Let's see here. Let's see if we can't get any clues here.
and do you recall event as far as that text message or why you would send that to?
To be honest with you, it was, I guess you could view it as a flirty text.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, so he does not view it without a doubt. Without a doubt. He says, to be honest with you. So that right away puts it into the extremely unlikely to be true category. But then it's followed up with repeating pronouns on steroids. So, and then he says, I guess you could view it as a flirty text. So he doesn't say, I viewed it as a flirty text. It was a flirty text. He says, I guess you could say. So there's no ownership at all of what he's saying, and it's dishonest. So then the question is, what the hell did it mean? If the well text isn't flirting, it's serious. Now we know it has, is it 3 exclamation marks? I think it has 3 exclamation marks. I'm pretty sure it has 3, which makes it high sensitivity, right? It means that we would guess. If I saw an well on my phone with 3 exclamation marks, my assumption would be that it meant something, that it was intended to be received in a serious or meaningful way. So what are the other possible meanings that well could have had? It's not flirty. That's the only thing we know. The only thing we know for sure is he wasn't flirting. If he wasn't flirting, Vince, loophole lawyer, is utterly convinced that Brian Higgins was like madly in love with Karen Reed and, was so enamored with her that, he's telling Brian Albert about her, that, he gave her an ultimatum, basically. I don't know if he said that or if I'm throwing that in there for him. I might be. Right. But the idea is that this is serious and heavy for him. And okay, let's run with that theory for a second. If that's true, then what was the well? Was that an ultimatum? I guess that's one possibility. He's viewing it as an ultimatum. Another possibility is that it's a continuing conversation from when they met to have that drink at his place and at his other apartment, not the one in Sandwich, but the actual, I forget, not Brockton, maybe? Is that where it is? I forget. But when she goes to his apartment for a drink, and it really ends up just being a drink, and they both say it was weird, and then she left. Is it a continuation from that conversation? Like, I'm not going to do this with you unless you and John are done? Is this a, well, Karen, did you make a decision? Because what he just said, and I really don't know that I've ever fully grasped. I don't know that until right now I eliminated the possibility that he was flirting. Because I could see a world where it is kind of flirting, right? But Brian Higgins definitively just told us that he does not see that text as being flirtatious. He clearly took it was serious. And when you think back to that moment, right? Like, he's alone. his behavior had completely changed, how he was, carrying himself before Karen and John show up at the waterfall, and then after changes. His like whole personality changes. But he's sitting there and we see him, he's checking the phone, right? And then we see him put it away. We see him checking the phone. So we know that, he's clearly thinking about Karen. And it was serious, right? So the question is, we know it was serious. What did it mean? I don't know. Think about it. Let me know, and we will talk about it.
Around midnight or so, when you leave the waterfall, I'm sorry, let me take it back just one step. At some point over the course of the evening while you're at the waterfall, what, if any, discussion is there around the table as far as next steps or where to go from there?
Well, there was talk at the table, I think initially about going back to Chris Albert's pizza shop to have some food and drink. And at some point that transitioned into going back to Brian Albert's house.
And as far as the invitation to go back to Brian Albert's house, was that something that was extended to the entirety of the table?
I took it as an open invitation to the people that were together at the table, yeah.
So this is a very strange answer. Like, he doesn't know how to answer this. And I think if I hadn't studied this case so closely, I might have guessed that the reason for the stuttering is that it wasn't an open invitation, that maybe he didn't even think he was invited, or that he wasn't sure maybe if he was invited. But actually, I think it might be because he's not sure. Anytime he's asked a question where he knows that Brian Albert is also going to be asked that same question, and he's aware that Brian Albert could give a different answer, he stumbles. So as I'm going through this now, and in my mind, we know when Brian Albert and Brian Higgins and Nicole Albert are walking out of the waterfall, they are all pointing in the direction of John and Karen. Maybe there's other people in that little bunch too, but they are definitely pointing in the direction of John and Karen and saying, like, let's go, come on, come to my house. So it was definitely an open invitation. And I know I've heard Karen say she wasn't sure if they were welcome. I've heard her say it. She said something like, I didn't hear the invitation extended to you. Are you sure we're welcome? But we all see it. So Karen doesn't know. It doesn't appear like she was paying attention, but it is clear from the waterfall video that Brian Albert and Nicole Albert are also pointing in the direction of what appears to be John and maybe Karen and saying, come on, come. So it was an open invitation to the people that were there. And because I know that, as I see the language here, which is very sensitive, he's definitely showing signs of deception. I can't help but wonder if it's because it's an answer he's not sure what Brian Albert is going to say here. Like, for example, if I'm Brian Albert and I don't want people to think that I had anything to do with this case, I might say, no, I didn't invite anybody back to the house. I didn't know John and Karen were coming back to the house, right? Which is, kind of what he does say. He doesn't exactly say that, but he says, oh, I didn't know who was coming, whatever, something more or less, I didn't know. So I don't think this is because he doesn't think he was invited. He knows he was invited.
And Mr. Albert's house, is that somewhere that you had been to before?
I had been there, the twins' graduation party, which was outside in the backyard. And I think I may have dropped him off on one occasion. I may have dropped something in his mailbox, but those would be the only other times.
And are you
Would be.
familiar, at least now, with the address and sort of where you were going? Did you know where you were going that night?
I knew where I was going, yes.
And the address was 34 Fairview Road.
That is correct, yes.
And about what time? About midnight or so, when you're leaving, who, if anyone, was leaving the bar around the same time?
I mean, I think pretty much everybody was wrapping up and leaving. I
Which
know
one?
that I beat Brian and Nicole back to the house.
Now, as far as the time at the waterfall, with reference to either Mr. O'Keefe or Ms. Reed, what, if any, observations did you make in regard to what they were drinking that night?
I think John was having beers, his typical, what I would see him with. And the defendant had, glasses.
And you recall her ever at any point that you were there? If you
It's just unbelievable. He can't even get the word defendant out, right? He can't even say the defendant. It's just such a disgrace.
recall drinking out of a glass different than the one she took out of her coat when she first arrived?
I don't recall.
Now, you drove from the waterfall to Fairview Road. About how long a drive was that?
Probably a few minutes. But the weather was, I remember when I came out, I put the wipers on. There was some snow on the ground, but it was the type of snow where the roadway was still black at the time, but because it was being driven on, but the sidewalk had a light coating.
Okay. So this is a rehearsed part of his testimony. And it's kind of funny to watch, right? Because at first, he doesn't register what he's being asked entirely. So he doesn't start right away with the rehearsed part of his testimony until he thinks about it a little bit. And then he tries to throw in the rehearsed part about the snow. So the first part of his answer is ridiculous because he says probably, in terms of, he's asked how long of a drive is it from the waterfall to 34 Fairview. It's a very short drive. And he can't answer that directly. So he reduces the commitment and won't answer from memory. It's probably just a few minutes. But then he remembers, oh shit, I got to find a way to put snow on the ground because I have to talk about this plow maneuver in the driveway, which didn't happen, obviously, because there was no snow, or very, very little on the ground at this time. So now he has to make up this part about snow and completely botches it. One thing about Brian Higgins, I don't know if this was like a little bit of hubris where he just figured, well, I don't have to practice very much. Like I can rehearse testimony and it'll be fine. But he's terrible at it. Like anything that he's rehearsed, he just stumbles so egregiously over. It's so obvious because of that, right? I mean, he just cannot get these rehearsed statements out correctly. They're like, the timing is off. They sound misplaced. They don't make sense. He's stumbling all over the place. So they're very obviously rehearsed. And again, why does any of this need to be rehearsed? Like, who cares? Who cares? Well, he obviously does, right? And clearly, this is important for some reason.
And you drive over to the home, and you mentioned that you beat Mr. Albert there. Is that correct?
I did.
And so, with regard to the home, when you get there, what did you do when you got there?
Well, I was kind of being a smart ass, and I dropped the plow and I did a little sweep of the driveway. And then I got out of the driveway because I didn't want to get blocked in, and I parked.
And do you recall where you parked in relation to the house?
I do, by the mailbox.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, if I could publish what's been marked as Exhibit 72.
Okay.
And Mr. Higgins, do you recognize what?
All right. So obviously, we know this is deception because we know this isn't where he parked. Now, there's a couple of other indicators in there. Also, we know, and I had just noticed this, but it's something to pay close attention to. He did this little like maneuver thing. He did this little like dance when he was talking about the maneuver with the plow. That's important. Some people, like me, they move their body around when they're talking normally. Other people will do it when they're being deceptive. What we are seeing from Brian Higgins is that he does it when he's being deceptive. So that's important for later. Just put that in the back of your mind. If you see him doing it again, then you know, oh, this is storytelling, and it's something that he really wants us to believe because he's adding emphasis by using his body to tell it, right? So this whole story, it really does call into question, why is this plow so important? And for a very long time, I agreed with some of you. Let me see if I can find you. I'm going to find you here, Ginger. So earlier, Ginger, you said Brian walks dog, Brian Higgins, car with plow in driveway, drunken fight, dog attacks. John falls on the plow, hits his head on the plow, right? And then, Ginger mentioned Sergio and his assessment. So, and it does, there's no question that there's something about the plow because he makes such a big deal. Both him and Brian Albert make it a point to not only talk about this stupid plow maneuver that we know did not happen at this time because there really just wasn't enough snow. There's no snow on the ground, right? There's not even really enough snow until the next day to be dropping the plow in the driveway. So it's a very bizarre thing to say. But let's think about this practically, okay? First of all, there are other cars in the driveway. Notice that he doesn't show us the driveway, which is pretty funny. But there were other cars at the house. So that right away kind of calls into question how he would even be able to plow the driveway to begin with, right? Also, if he was going to plow the driveway, or if there was a fight or evidence in the driveway, I'm not sure that he would have been able to move that car all the way to the top of the driveway, right? So there's something wrong in this story, soup to nuts. I'm just thinking out loud right now. I've never thought about that before until right this moment. Actually, what I was thinking is, as I go through the statements of everybody else, because as I mentioned earlier, before I got distracted with these other cases, what I was focusing on was the time of the party before Karen and John walk in, and the entire group, including Julie Nagel and Sarah Levinson, everybody's lying about what happened before they got there, which tells me that they have a reason to lie. And to me, it's all covering for what happens when John and Karen walk in. For a long time, because of this plow story, I believed that John may have never even made it into the house, that something happened outside, that like Brian Higgins was outside waiting for him. They get into some kind of a little altercation and maybe John hits his head on the plow. But after going through everybody else's testimony, not including Brian Higgins, it really seems as though he walks into the house and they see him walk into the house. And if that's the case, I don't know what significance the plow and the driveway and all of this could possibly have in this story, or why it would be so sensitive. So it's just one of these mysteries, and hopefully we'll figure it out at some point because it is so bizarre. It seems like such a stupid thing to spend so much time lying about, right? It just seems like, I don't know, bizarre. Just one of these like bizarre case mysteries. Okay, let's get a little bit farther and then I'll go to you guys.
I do.
And what do you recognize that?
34 Fairview.
So, Mr. Higgins, with that laser pointer now in your hand, if you could direct the jury's attention to, if you see it in this photograph, where you parked in your Jeep.
So the back end of the Jeep would have been right
Would have
around
been.
the mailbox itself. And the edge of the driveway is right there. I wanted to make sure that I was not blocking the driveway or blocked in.
Wow.
And so the front of your vehicle would have been pointing in which direction?
I believe that'd be going towards
I believe.
Chapman Street.
Yeah.
And so which part of your vehicle was?
So I'm just going to quickly walk you through this so you can see it, because it's going to give you clues for other things that he lies about. So look at the way that he reduces all the commitment on this statement. It's just, it's so clearly deception. Watch.
So the back end of the
So he starts with so, right? So the. So so we have right out of the gate repetition.
Jeep would have been right around the.
And then we have would have been, which is, by itself would have been enough, plenty to dismiss this statement outright. Because what it's saying is, yeah, if I would have parked my Jeep there, then this is where the back end would have been. But because I didn't actually have the back end there. Because he said would have been, we know it's not true.
The mailbox itself. And the edge of the driveway is right there. I wanted to make sure that.
So then he does the Wendy Adelson thing that I always talk about. He adds detail to try to make it sound more believable. So he talks about, right, making sure that it was aligned with the mailbox, right, outright. And then now he's starting to go into wanting to make sure not to block the driveway, and he can't even get that outright. So he doubles up on the pronoun, which is a clear indicator of deception. And then he reduces commitment at the end here.
I was not blocking the driveway.
It's uncontracted. I wanted to make sure that I was not. Another indicator.
Or blocked in.
And so the front of your vehicle would have been pointing in which direction?
So it's just, I point that out because once you know that, it's helpful. It's like, oh, all right. So when I do see these things again later, it gives you confirmation that when you have an instinct that he's lying, well, yep, he is. Here's the evidence for it. Unfortunately, we can see what he's being deceptive about, but we can't always see what the truth is, which is really annoying.
I believe that'd be going towards Chapman Street.
And so
Right, that's the other reduction of commitment right there.
to the house, so the driver's side or the passenger side?
So the passenger side would be closest to the house.
So you parked along the front of the house sort of with traffic, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So the passenger side would be closest to the house if the car was parked in front of the house, but it wasn't. So useless story.
So you arrive at the house, you do, as far as the maneuver with the plow in the driveway, and then you park the vehicle, and where is it that you go from there?
Into the house.
And when you get into the house, who, if anyone, is there, or who, if anyone, is coming in with?
So unfortunately, because he answers into the house and not I went into the house, we can't say definitively whether he goes into the house at this moment. Because there's a question. Did he stay outside and maybe wait for John in his Jeep? It's a good question. And actually, we can't tell from this answer right here because he doesn't really answer.
So I might have been there. Well, it was about the same time that Brian and Nicole showed up. I don't know if they entered before me or I entered after them. I entered the house. What I recollect is that Brian Albert Jr. is sitting kind of at the island or in the island area, and I believe he was flanked by at least one female, possibly two.
So this is
One on each
totally
side.
fabricated. This did not happen.
Either of those females, did you know them? Did you recognize them? Did you know who they were?
I may have recognized one I've seen before, but I didn't know
I
them.
may have recognized one.
And just lastly, before we go back into the house, when you park, when you do the sort of plowing in the driveway and then parking, did you see Mr. Albert arrive at the house around that time?
When I parked the Jeep?
Yes.
Well, yes, so I made the sweep, and as I could see the vehicle coming up, I made the sweep, got out of the way so he could park.
So we had parked in the driveway around the time that you're parking on the street.
Yes.
And so when you come to the house and you see the people that you've described, where were they situated within the house?
So I came through what I would call
Listen
like a
to this.
breezeway door. So there's a front door to the residence. There's the garages, and in between there is a like a breezeway door. I came in through there, and it's kind of like you're in the kitchen. And I think there's like an island, so to speak. You may be able to sit at it, and Brian Higgins Jr. was right there, and again flanked by one, if not two females.
Okay.
Now, at some point,
How weird is that? Did someone just say there was a commercial of me saying I was live? I don't have commercials. I shouldn't have commercials. That's so weird. So if you guys are seeing commercials, I don't, it's really funny. I've been hearing that and I have no idea why. So I don't know if YouTube has recently changed some of their stuff. I'm going to have to go in and double check because I've heard that from other people too. So I apologize. That's so weird. I have no idea what YouTube has been doing, but it's bizarre. I'll look into it tonight. I was supposed to look into it last week. I completely forgot. I will look into it after tonight. All right. What I'm listening for right now is, does Brian Higgins even go into this house? Like, what is the evidence that Brian Higgins walks in? Now, based on what he has just said, just based on his words here, I'm not so sure that we have even heard him say he went in. Because we know that the flanked by two females is total bullshit. Now he's talking about which door he entered. He describes the breezeway door. So it's so ridiculous. He's describing the same door that Brian Albert and Colin Albert used to get into the house, right? The one that goes into the family room, except that he then tells us that that door took him into the kitchen. So he's telling us that he went into the side door, but actually described going into the front door. So that's not right? That's not what happened. So he's trying to make it sound legitimate because he's trying to give us all this extra information, but all of that extra information is silliness. It's like gibberish. It doesn't actually make sense. If you follow the words that he's using, that's not how you get into this house. You certainly don't get in the way he just described. If you were to go the way he described, you should be in the family room, not into the kitchen. So far, everything he has said about his time at the Albert home, including pulling up, parking, the whole sweep of the driveway, walking into the house, who he saw when he got into the house, how he got into the house, all of that is deception. None of that is true. None of it. So now, like, does he even enter the house? At any point, does he go into this house? I mean, at this moment, the answer should be so obvious. Like, yeah, of course he does, Sam. Of course he goes. But nothing he has said so far indicates that he did. Everything he just said was a clusterfuck completely. And I'm thinking, as I'm talking, okay, let's think back. We know that they all say, I'm thinking of Sarah Levinson. She says, "Oh, Mr. Albert." The one thing that Sarah Levinson said that makes me think maybe he did go in the house at some point is that she thought that Brian Albert and Brian Higgins were coming directly from New York from the funeral. She didn't know that they had gone to the waterfall. She didn't know that they were all coming in together. She thought that those two walked in separate together first, and everybody else came soon right after, right? That's her testimony. If she hadn't said that, at this very moment, I'm waiting to hear him say he walked in that house. As of this moment, I haven't heard it yet because everything he just said is deception in some form or fashion. And if he walked in like a normal person, why isn't he able to tell us who he saw when he walked in the house? Why isn't he able to tell us which door he walked in and where that door takes you? I don't know. It's very, very, very suspect, though.
After your arrival, who, if anyone else that you were familiar with, came by the house?
I believe it was Jen and Matt McCabe.
You know about how long it was after you arrived that they arrived?
No, I don't know. I mean, I don't think it was much longer. People started,
Right?
flowed in at that point.
Do you see this?
And beyond.
Okay, that's not normal. Brian Higgins doesn't talk like this. Like, Brian Higgins doesn't normally speak like a person who can't get words out. And he is completely falling apart right now. So we're talking about extreme sensitivity, like life and death. What's going on? Right? What the hell is going on? Like, what is going on right now? Does Brian Higgins walk into this freaking house? It's crazy. This is crazy. Twig says, to your point, Sam, when Brian Higgins recalls Karen and her glass, he doesn't say would have been. He even remembers. It's true, right? Well, because, he probably did notice the glass that she came in with. He probably did think, oh, she came in. But they all noticed that, right? Chris and Julie noticed it. The thing about that, though, is like Nicole Albert walks out of this bar with a drink in her hand. It seems like part of the culture of this town is like John did it too. I can't remember where. I think John walks out with his beer. I think he walks right out of the bar with it. I know that I have seen somewhere John with a drink in his hand outside, either at CF McCarthy's or maybe it's after CF. Do they leave? Yeah, I think he leaves CF McCarthy's with a drink, maybe. I think John leaves too with a drink. So crazy. Crazy. Hello, Cece. How are you, dear? She sends $9.99. I actually don't think it was flirty. Yeah. He felt left on red after their date at his house. Well, it's like him saying, are we ever going to address this? This being them and their relationship. Yeah, well, I think you're right. I think as far as I'm concerned, it wasn't flirty. So, correct. Yeah, it's not flirty. It's serious. For him, I think it was serious. And I think you're right. Right. Yes, that's right. Yeah. So I'm reading this again. Like, are we ever going to, yeah. So are we going to do this thing or what? That kind of is this, I like the way Alan Jackson kind of framed it, right? Like, what am I, chopped liver? Like that kind of what am I, meaningless to you? I don't think it was that exactly. I think you're probably right. It's something more like, all right, like, what's the deal? But I think it was serious. And I think it speaks to the fact that he really did have stronger feelings for her. That he probably did tell Brian Albert about her. And he probably did tell other friends and coworkers about her because he did. He did really like her. It's pretty funny how quickly he was willing to turn on her, but I think he did really like her. And maybe that's why he was quick to turn on her, because, you know, it was like payback kind of. I hate to say that, but could have been. Jennifer Russell sends $5. He was getting close. Karen and John find out what John knew, possibly about drugs, higher level organized, and Albert's why John called Canton and Rafferty. Let's talk. Yeah, I mean, we know that John was investigating drugs in that neighborhood, right? I think that's what it was. I mean, I think that's been verified by Rafferty. Absolutely. The only reason why I've never believed that was related to what happened to him that night was because I just don't think that Brian Albert would plan to do anything to anybody in his home with his kids around. Like maybe if the kids were out of the country or out of town or whatever, but I just don't see, like, you know, I think at the end of the day, he's a family man even more than he is a cop, right? You're the oldest of 7, born and raised in a family that drills family into your head as like number one, family. So my guess is that he wouldn't have intentionally done anything to hurt John with his children around, and his kids were in the house, right? Both Caitlin was there, obviously Brian Jr. was there, and Colin was most likely there too. And, you know, again, 3 people I just don't think he would have intentionally put in harm's way if he had a choice. Now, you know, could that have been something that was underneath and brewing? Certainly possible. Sure. Yeah, possible. You would think, I mean, because Brian Albert also worked on drug cases, you would think that would be something that would have brought them together, assuming, of course, that, you know, Brian Albert had nothing to do with any of that stuff. But, you know, who knows? All right, where are we here? Let's take a little, we're going to take about like a minute. We'll take like, I have to run to the bathroom. We'll take a 2-minute fervent break. And we will do it. I had it all like ready to go. And then I used the feed that I was going to play for Brian Higgins. So let me stop this. We'll pull that up. We'll take a quick dance break and I will be back right here in 2 minutes or so. Let me pull it up. Okay, here we go. I'm really going to do a dance break though. I really am. Here we go.
Think you're better than me? Fuck you, hey. You are not lolly. Fuck you, hey. Think you're better than me? Fuck you, hey. But why don't we see? I'm a basic kind of guy, I really don't need a flaunt. Smoking 6 packs a day and I'm happy as a hog. All I do is mumble, do I really need any lungs? The trial 1 jury was just like me, they were hung. Trial 2 came around and you wanna bench me? Not 1 guilty vote was embarrassing to see. Need to remind you that my jury was 9-3. Take your little OUI and get about the scene. Fuck you, hey, hey. Think you're better than me? Fuck you, hey. You are not lolly. Fuck you, hey. Think you're better than me? Fuck you, hey. Well, why don't we see? Oh, I know what will get us the win. Ask French about his fucking ham sandwich again. That'll prove this beyond all reasonable doubt. Oh, who am I kidding? This shit is a rout.
It appears that I made a mistake.
You took this case so damn personally, and I hold that opinion to a scientific certainty. You weasel face, fuck bet, Arca Major P. Even with all the help you got from Beverly, standing ovation. What a robust cross. Psych. Your nerdy ass looks so fucking lost. Just think. $500,000 was all it cost to get our asses kicked in the fucking law. Think you're better than me? Fuck you, hey. You are not lolly. Fuck you, hey. Think you're better than me? Fuck you, hey. Well, why don't we see? Why don't we see? Hey. waiting for your response, Banky. Yeah.
Did I mention my jury was also hung?
David Yannetti, yeah, you know my style. The only member of the team to make Bev smile. If your eyes are bad, I will offer you my readers, but they ain't gonna help when I impeach ya. I'm the reigning hot Mike's sexiest man. All these women in the street, yeah, they know who I am. They see my dimples from a mile away. When they pass me, they scream, Karen Reed was framed. That's right, oh yeah. Beverly said no more, of course. That's right, oh yeah. So my natural response was to say, of course. Come on! Michael Proctor said he truly hates me. I got a question, Proctor, how's life treating you lately? They say everybody loves you, Nettie, but if you ask me, my heart belongs to Baba Leslie. That's right, oh yeah. They say Karen committed the crime. That's wrong, oh no. To quote myself, we now know that was a lie. Come on! Office in Salem, Dedham, and Boston. Something in Norfolk County is rotten. Morrissey had me saying that is outrageous. A new DA might be what could save us.
Absolutely. Oh, that's such a cute song. Yes, I will say, I was just thinking, listening to that, we need like a top 10 greatest hits moments from David Yannetti, because sometimes when I listen back, randomly to different testimony, David Yannetti had some of the greatest moments throughout the entirety. If you take the pretrial motions and just some of the actual cross-examinations that he did in the first trial, especially, were amazing. Like when he did the cross-examination of Caitlyn, I mean, like, he puts her in her place. It's like, whoa, I didn't see that in real time. Or maybe if I did, I just didn't understand the gravity of what I was looking at. So it didn't, I didn't hit me the way it did when I had gone back. But it's like, oh, amen. Someone needs to put that person in her place, because boy, is her testimony garbage. Talk about not taking the legal system seriously. Ay, these people. Anyway, thank you, Mr. Yannetti, without a doubt. Deserves a huge round of applause. Okay, so we're going to jump right back in here to our boy. Yay. So, okay, we're going to jump back into Higgins, and what I am going to be looking for, to be clear, is evidence of him walking into the house, him saying, I went into the house, because nothing he said to this point indicates clearly actually that he was in the house. Now, that could be because whatever was going on in the house, he doesn't want to tell us. It doesn't necessarily mean he didn't go in. It just means that maybe he went in and nothing that happened he's allowed to say. Maybe. Or maybe he didn't go in. Maybe he's in the parking lot, in the driveway, in the Jeep. Because all I know from his testimony alone right now, if this was all I knew, I still haven't heard him say anything legitimately about getting into this house. And that is very strange. Very, very strange. Okay, so that's what we're listening for. Evidence of him being inside the house this night. Here we go.
Sort of the kitchen area that you were describing before. Where else did you go within the house that night?
At one point, briefly, Brian Albert showed me some photographs, family. I believe primarily it might have been of his son who had recently been in the Marine Corps. Gone into, I should say.
And
I believe primarily it would have been the only way you could reduce the commitment more to what he's saying is like to not say it at all. So now he's giving us just absolute bullshit. We know is bullshit, verifiable bullshit, across the board bullshit. And he can't even like reduce commitment like a normal person. He can't even deceive us normally. It's so much an egregious lie. Right? I mean, it's outrageous. So what does this indicate? It indicates, as I said, one of two things. He doesn't even go in the house, or whatever has happened in this house is so extreme and so sensitive that he can't even admit to going into the house. So everything up to the point where he pulls up to the house is fabricated, is just completely walled off. Like, in his brain, he's put a brick wall, and all that sits there is stuff he, right, has made up, invented stories that he's willing to pull from that are just egregious lies because he can't go past the wall to tell us anything at all, nothing that could possibly even be close to true, because nothing he's said so far is true. I would love to see the grand jury transcript. I know we don't have access to that, but it would be really nice if we did, because I would like to see when he's with the feds, does any of that seem true? I mean, does he approach that the same way he approached this? Because that can't be good for him. I mean, this is really bad. Worse than I remember. Worse, way worse. Really, really bad.
do you recall, or why was he showing you specifically like those photographs of his son in the Marine Corps?
Because he's proud.
Now, let me ask you this. As far as yourself and or Mr. Albert, what, if any, familiarity or what, if any, background do you or Mr. Albert have with regard to the military?
Brian was in the Marine Corps. I was in the Army.
Now, this period that you're talking about, about how long a period was that?
It was brief.
And beyond yourself and Mr. Albert,
I love that.
anyone else from the group that you
That's
described that
amazing.
was in the room at the same time as you and Mr. Albert?
I don't think so. I think Nicole may have popped in for a second, but I'm not 100% positive on that.
And as far as, do you know approximately what time you left the house on Fairview that evening?
I'd guesstimate it was anywhere between 12:30 and 1 o'clock, but I'm not 100% positive.
This is insane, you guys.
Is that correct?
It was a short period of time. I knew kind of from the onset when I got in there, it probably wasn't going to be a long time, because I'm not a beer drinker, and that's what they had.
Okay, yeah. So still haven't heard anything from Brian Higgins that indicates he was even at the house. This is insane. I've never realized how completely insane this is. This is totally insane. So nothing he has said, nothing, not a word of any of this from the time that he left the waterfall to now. None of this is true. 0. 0, 0. He can't even tell us how he got into the house correctly. So what is going on, you guys? What is going on? I don't know. We have to, I mean, what is going on? Was he there? Were you even at this house?
So I was probably one of the first people to leave.
Now he's leaving. He hasn't even gotten there yet.
For that entirety of the time that you were there, did you go anywhere else within
Good
the home
question.
beyond what you've described as far as the kitchen and the living room?
No,
Did you go upstairs at any time?
no,
Did you go downstairs in any sort of basement area at any time?
no.
And when you exited the home, you recall which of the two doors that you described that you would have exited from?
The same door I came in, the breezeway.
Now, during
The
time
breezeway off
that
the
you were
kitchen.
there, similar to what I asked about the waterfall, how would you describe sort of the mood or demeanor within the home?
It was fine. I mean, everybody was happy.
Mm,
And
I mean,
at any point in time while you were at 34th Fairview, do you,
crazy. This is crazy.
any of the people that were in the house, do you recall seeing them go outside of the house and come back or anything like that?
I can't say definitively I saw anybody come in or out of the house, but I think somebody might have been in the process of maybe being picked up.
What?
And not anybody that you were super familiar with, is that fair to say?
I think it was one of the females.
What?
Now, with respect to the front of the house, at any point in time that you were inside of the house, was your attention drawn or did you look
No.
out the window?
Did you see anything?
or anything like that?
Did anything happen
No.
while you were there? No.
And when you were in the kitchen area, do you recall sort of how you were positioned in relation to the windows facing the front of the house?
So I would have had my back
Oh my
to
God.
that area.
Gotta be kidding.
My back
Seriously.
to the door that I came in.
Right. The door I didn't come in.
And
I would have had.
specifically with reference
Okay,
to
we have to stop.
Mr. O'Keefe.
So
and
he
Ms.
just said, what he just told us is, I would have had my back to the window if I had been in front of the window, because he didn't say he just told us that he would have been. We already know. Anytime that Brian Higgins says I would have, it's not from memory. Okay. It didn't happen. Just like he would have put his Jeep facing up the street, right? So seriously, nothing he has said. Nothing. Nothing Brian Higgins has told us since he left the waterfall indicates that he was even on the property, let alone in the house. He cannot give you any statement whatsoever about his time at that house. And at this moment, what puts him at the house? How do we know he was there? His Jeep wasn't there, right? Nobody saw the Jeep because the Jeep was allegedly in front of the house. So, I mean, what is the credible evidence that we have that places Brian Higgins at this house at this time? I mean, I guess I don't know, phone record? I mean, I don't know. I'm lost for words. There's nothing in his statement that tells us definitively that Brian Higgins was at this house. I think he was there, right? I mean, I can't imagine he's going to put himself at this house on this night if he wasn't actually there, because why would anyone do that? So he had to have been there. And that means that every word he has uttered so far since he left the waterfall is completely bullshit, totally fabricated. None of it is true. It's kind of pieced together from either outright lying, like I parked in front of the house, or rehearsed testimony that he got together with Brian Albert and that he botches completely. Like he can't even get it right, but at least we know there's a through line close enough that we know he's trying to give us the bullshit rehearsed lines, right? He botches those though, totally. So I don't know. I've never seen anything like this though. I don't remember being this sure. Like he's so full of shit. There's no evidence at all from his testimony that what he is saying is at all true. Nothing. He can't even tell you where he was standing, which is extremely problematic, right? I mean, extremely problematic. It's really bad. Balancing debits and credits sends $10, says witnesses are lying. Data is totally messed with, right? Data is totally messed with. We need to start thinking in alternative theories and motives to keep moving forward. Higgy probably wasn't there at the time, whatever happened. But then it makes me wonder, but this is my point. If he's not there at all, why would you put yourself there, right? Like if there was some other place in the world that Brian Higgins was at this time, on this day, don't you think that he would do everything in his power to prove that? Why would you want to put yourself at this house on this night if you weren't there? You would want no part of this house on this night. I mean, so you would just be like, I wasn't there, which tells us that he was there and that everything he just said is a lie, which basically tells us that we have to start over. I mean, we don't know anything at all about what happened, not as far as Brian Higgins is concerned, because we can't, seriously, I can't stress this enough. Like the words coming out of his mouth have no meaning. They're just utterly nonsense. They're as important as like Jen McCabe telling us that, she was looking at pictures of Brian, or I guess Nicole telling us she's looking at pictures of her husband in the family room when he was in the Marines. It's like, okay, we know that didn't happen. You've got 6 people telling us the same story, but they all get it wrong. And that's what he's doing. I mean, he's just giving us rehearsed testimony that's coming out incorrect. So like the flanked by 1, maybe 2 females story, like telling us that he came into the breezeway, but then can't describe clearly what happens once you walk through that door. I mean, he put a lot of words in that sentence. There was a lot, like it was a whole paragraph of describing a door and steps, right? He was trying to make a distinction between there being a front door and then a side door. And he says, I would have, by the way, would have gone. So if he could prove he wasn't at this house, I mean, there's no way you could get me anywhere near this house. So he had to have been there. And yet is like lying worse than anybody I've ever seen. And he's not good at it. He's like really bad at it. Like, he makes Jen McCabe look like a good liar, which is like really saying something, really, that's not good. It's not good. I don't know what, I don't even know. I'm like beside myself. I can't believe I never realized how egregiously bad he is at lying and how none of what he has said about this house is even close to true. All we have that suggests Brian was at Fairview is the "you come in here" text. That's right. Yeah. And I guess him telling the investigator. Well, no, we also have the video of him pointing in the direction of John and Karen, or both, or one or the other, and saying, like, let's go. So we have that implying he wants them to go wherever he is. Then we have the "you coming here" text to John. That's a good point. We see him at the police station later. Although, I would really want Aussie Insider to do an analysis of that video. I wonder if she's gotten a chance to do that. I should ask her that question. Because now I'm wondering, is that video edited? It certainly could be, right? It seems like it would have been an easier one to edit, because there's long periods of time where all we see is really just snowfall. But because he typically lives farther away, right? He no longer has his place in Canton. We would expect to see him at the police station if he was still in town. We do see him at the police station, 1:30, right? So, but other than that, it's wild. So here's what we know. I guess I am willing to say at this moment, because he says to investigators he was there, we have the "you coming here" text. We have him at least, looking and motioning to Karen and John to go with them wherever they were going. I think it's okay to say he was there. But whatever happened was so extreme, was so horrifying to Brian Higgins, that he will not even think about what really happened. Because on the witness stand, all the words that come out of his mouth from the moment that he leaves the waterfall are fabricated. Maybe that's the purpose. Maybe the purpose of the Jeep and maybe it's all just to give them something, to give him some other story to tell. Because whatever really happened, he wants no part of at all. None. I would love, I guess Karen didn't see the Jeep. I don't know. I would love to know, did she see the Jeep? Does she ever remember seeing a Jeep on the property? That would be a good question for Karen Reed. At any point, were you aware there was a Jeep on the property? I don't know, man. This is wild. It's absolutely crazy. Balancing debits and credits says, pressure, but from who? IMO, he was supposed to be the fall guy. IMO, he was supposed to be the fall guy. I don't know. It's a good question, right? Like, pressure, but from who? It might just be internal pressure, right? So in other words, if you know that you're responsible for the death of a police officer and you are a police officer like he is, right? So if you know that you were at that house and you are directly responsible for this guy's death, right? Then the pressure is going to come from you. Because you know that you were there, other people saw that you were there, and you have to trust, because Brian Higgins can't go up to Julie Nagel or Sarah Levinson and say, hey, are you guys going to lie for me? And are you going to say what I need or want you to say about when, if you saw me in the house or not? So he has to trust that Brian Albert is going to take care of all of that other stuff for him, right? So I would think that the pressure would be coming from him and whatever anxiety that he's having about who knows what, who saw him when, where they saw him, what everybody was doing. And the only way, this is one of the reasons why I started thinking that John must have walked into the house and everybody must have seen him. Because it's like, if some kind of huge, horrible incident happens, so let's say, you put yourself in their shoes, like, be whoever you want. You're Sarah Levinson. You're hanging out with your buddy. It's his birthday. His parents come home at midnight from wherever they were. Everybody's like, hey, everyone's kind of buzzed or has been drinking, including you. And within a few minutes of everybody getting back to the house, some kind of commotion's going on in maybe the room next door, or maybe right in the room with you. Takes you a minute to figure out what the hell is even going on, right? Because it's loud and everyone's drinking and you're distracted. And then all of a sudden, there's something serious going on. Everyone's like rushing to attend to a guy on the ground who just hit his head, maybe on the fireplace, say, for example. You are now involved, because you're there, with a very serious incident. A very serious incident. And for a long time, I put myself in that position and thought, well, yeah, I mean, then there's no doubt that they would have called an ambulance, right? I'm thinking this through as I'm talking right now. I'm trying to think this through. Is it so? Okay, let me ask this question, because I'm not sure the answer. I really don't know. Is it plausible if you are Julie Nagel? The answer is yes, because Julie Nagel is one of them, without a doubt. Julie Nagel is basically an Albert, so she's going to do whatever they are all doing. But the question is, could this all have gone down in front of Sarah Levinson, and they all are okay with not calling the police somehow? They somehow convince her to be okay with it too, in the moment. That's really the question. How do you handle that? If you're Brian Albert, if you're Nicole Albert, if you're Jennifer McCabe, how do you handle that? Right? I mean, so that's the question. And is there a way that this all happens, everybody sees it, everybody's there, and everybody walks out of that house agreeing not to say anything to anyone? I don't know the answer. But that's the question. And I think if the answer is no, then maybe Brian Higgins doesn't ever make it into the house. Maybe Brian Higgins is outside. Maybe it's that simple. Maybe Brian Higgins is exactly like Twigs, you were just saying. He's, texting John, are you guys coming here? He's waiting for them to get there. He sees, John without Karen, calls him over to the side of the garage, right? They get into an altercation. Brian Albert on the other side has let the dog out back. The dog either jumps the fence and makes its way in the middle of a scuffle that breaks out between these two. And whether it's the plow that John hits his head on, or, the water spigot, which is what I've heard, or anything else, Brian Albert ends up, obviously coming to help. And that's kind of what happens, right? So it doesn't happen in front of everybody. It happens somewhere else. The problem with that, and the reason why that is getting harder and harder for me to believe, is because everybody in that house is lying about what they were doing before John and Karen arrive. And there's no reason for them to be lying unless there's a reason for them to be lying. And they are definitely hiding something. There's absolutely no question about it. And it just doesn't make sense. If none of them saw anything, why lie? There's no reason to lie, right? So I don't know. I mean, these are really these are the questions. But I will say, honestly, I'm more sure than I've ever been after watching this tonight that Brian Higgins is without a shadow of a doubt directly involved in whatever happened to John O'Keefe. There is no doubt. No doubt. Because number one, if he wasn't, he would not have been at this house. He would have never put himself here. If he could have proved he didn't go to the house, he could have proved it, right? See, I was never there. Yep, I pulled up. Nobody was in the house. I left. I went home. I was home in 20 minutes. Here's my GPS. You're not going to destroy your phone. You're going to be giving as much of that phone over to whoever you need to show that you were not there. I mean, now, of course, that's not what he does. What does he do? He destroys his phone, but he prints the texts. See, no, I'm not hiding anything. Here's the conversations with Karen. Let me just destroy all the other stuff on it, like my location data, my text messages with Brian Albert and phone calls with Kevin Albert and the chief of police. And Twiggs reminds us, don't forget the police across the street had Ring video, was initially referenced, that's right, in the very early days. That's right. Thank you for reminding us. In the very early, we're talking about first week of this investigation, the police were referencing the video as evidence of Karen running into John. And then the video, right, allegedly, the video was never viewed because the officer in charge on the scene that morning from the Canton PD testified that, oh, well, I helped install, or I had that same camera and I helped install it. So I knew, it didn't actually capture the scene across the street. So you wouldn't have seen anything anyway, is what he said, right? Did anybody confiscate and view that video? Of course not. And remember, he was the acting chief, right? He was like the acting chief of police at the time, or like the second in command at the Canton Police Department, that guy who lived across the street from Brian Albert with the Ring camera pointed at the house. Yeah. And you see now the lengths that these people were willing to go. I mean, I can only hope and pray that Karen's civil team is all over these video edits, because I cannot see how that is not, that is a lawsuit. That's an enormous payout for Karen Reed. If her lawyers can prove that the police department edited the videos from the case, actually cut out scenes from the crime scene, the first 20 minutes after Officer Sheriff pulls up. I mean, can you imagine? If that is true and they can prove it, and I don't see how, I believe Aussie Insider, she's, as smart as they get. When it comes to computers and software engineering, and the fact that she can even look at it and see what she sees is beyond my ability to comprehend. And I believe her without a doubt. And if she can prove it, oh my God. if you are the Massachusetts State Police, that is got to be very scary because that's who would have done it. That's who was in charge of the video, right? And you have them testifying to it. You have them telling us it was there in their possession. Yeah, it's crazy. This is just wild. Absolutely wild. Oh my God, Twigs, have you been a member for 8 months? That's so exciting. Yes, you know what, Twigs, every day. That's my whole focus. Get in touch about having a group gathering. Absolutely, I will. You are the best. I adore you. I thank you so much for being here and being a sport. I really, really do. Hi, Kit. Kit sends $4.99. H said he parked in front in the same place one of the Albert's Jeep parked the night for plausible deniability. H said, okay, Higgins said he parked in front in the same place one of the Albert's Jeep parked that night. Yeah. So Kit, great point. And this is a whole nother kind of can of worms, but I totally believe it. I definitely think that one of the reasons why, okay, let's think this through. Brian Higgins is very clearly at the center. I've never been more sure in my whole life because of what we're seeing here. He can't tell us and won't tell us anything that happened that night. Just outright. This is all completely fabricated. Soup to nuts. He will not even tell us where he walked in and how he walked into that house. He can't. It's insane. So, okay, there's that. And whatever Brian Albert wants, in my mind, and this testimony this time is just validating the shit out of this. He's taking his marching orders from Brian Albert. So of the two, Brian Higgins is the more submitted one, right? He's the sub in the relationship, which means he has more culpability than Brian Albert. Because if Brian Albert was more culpable than Brian Higgins wouldn't be telling us what a great friend he is and wouldn't be repeating, first of all, two things. One, he says whatever Brian Albert wants him to say. He doesn't get it right, but he says whatever he wants him to say. And he's, careful not to throw him under the bus, careful to protect him wherever he can, even at his own expense, because he sounds like an absolute buffoon. I mean, the things that are coming out of his mouth are just not even sensible. They're just silly nonsense. And he's not dumb. I mean, Brian, this is his job. This is what he does for a living. Like, he understands law enforcement better than anyone. This is what he's been doing his whole life in one form or another. So he knows, right? And for that reason, I have no doubt that Caitlin Albert and her white Jeep Cherokee is at that house. I also believe wholeheartedly Caitlin was living at the house, living at 34 Fairview. She had not yet moved in with boyfriend Tristan. She does soon thereafter, but at this time, on January 29th of 2022, Caitlin was still living at home. That's why she's there, because she wasn't living with Tristan. That's why Tristan meets them for dinner, and then he goes home without her because she goes to her home because he has to get up early to go plow and do whatever, right? Which he doesn't end up doing based on his language during his testimony. That was the plan. That's not what he ends up doing, obviously, because his girlfriend and a dog will probably show up at his house, at 3 a.m. or whatever. So, or maybe earlier. But Caitlin's car is there. So you are 100% right. One of the big reasons that it's important that his car is prominent and visible on the property, and very well may be out in front at some point, is to try to account for why Caitlin's car, Caitlin's Jeep, it's clearly two very different types of vehicles, right? One is like a Jeep Wrangler, the other is a Jeep Cherokee, but they're both kind of white or in like the whitish family, enough that I guess, like you said, there's plausible deniability. That is the only reason that makes sense as to why the Jeep needed to be in front at some point, right? That definitely makes sense to me, and I am sure Caitlin was there. I have no doubt about that. I mean, Caitlin's testimony is another one that is just outrageous deception the whole way through. Like, really, in fact, it's kind of funny because, and I'm not saying this to judge Karen's attorneys at all. They're my heroes. I adore them, all the way. Unfortunately, I don't think they had anywhere near as much information as we all have now. And how could they? I mean, the Commonwealth was doing basically everything they could to obstruct any information coming into the hands of Karen and her team. Almost anything. I mean, like, they did everything they could to obstruct justice in this case. So they were working blind the vast majority of the first trial, at least. And Yannetti ends up focusing with Caitlin on the relationship with Katie. Katie? Is that her name? The firefighter? I think it is. I don't know why that didn't sound right, but with the firefighter friend. And, to me, he could have hammered her on almost anything else and really hammered her because she was so deceptive. And he's a good, David Yannetti is a good, like, when he's hammering you, he is good at it. Like, he can be mean and ruthless. And sometimes he does it with like a smile, and sometimes he's just like mean and ruthless. And he's really good at cross-examination. So he was tame. I mean, he could have really, if he had had all the information we have now and could go back and cross-examine Caitlin Albert, I bet you it would be very different. Because there's a lot wrong with what she's saying. I mean, so much wrong. How do I say this? Nephthys-ness? I think that's what it says. Nephthys-ness? Sends $5. Brian Albert, do a lockdown on party people after incident. Ex made Julie do a 180, stays at a party. She was just about to leave. Nicole speaks about it. Whoa, let's see this again. Question. Brian Albert do a lockdown on party people after an incident. Excuse me. Ex made Julie 180, stays at a party. She was just about to leave. Nicole speaks about it. Interesting. So I'm not exactly sure what this is a reference to, except well, I mean, you have to give me more information about this. The only reason why I think so early on in the police reports, and I mean very early on, there are police reports that actually say that Julie and Chris Albert are at 34 Fairview. But I think it's actually a mistake. I think it's Brian Tully's police report. And the reason why I think it's a mistake is because Chris Albert at the waterfall, if you study the waterfall, he's like legitimately giving hugs and saying goodbye to his niece. You see him, he's the very last person to stumble out of the bar. And it looks like he's going home. He only lives a few blocks away up the street from the waterfall. So it appears like Chris Albert does not end up at 34 Fairview. And because Julie leaves early and we don't see her on the waterfall video towards the end, they're sort of legitimately appear to have not been at the party. That's, I think, the reason why generally they're considered to be telling the truth about not being there. To my knowledge, I mean, does that mean that at no time Chris Albert couldn't have gone to the house in the middle of the night? Sure. They could have. But the other reason The other part of this, that's the whole ridiculous donut and coffee, the concocted story about getting Julie to the house the next morning, this routine that she has every year with Brian Jr. about donuts in his car, which is just completely ridiculous. Like, it's absurd. You couldn't come up with a better reason to have shown up at the house. Like, I don't know, you got a text from Jen McCabe, your buddy. I don't know. Anyway, but they're also trying to come up with a way to get Julie to the house, which to me is indicative again of her having not been there in the middle of the night. But I mean, I can be convinced of anything. In this case, if you provide me with some evidence, I'm happy to go down that rabbit hole because, yeah, I mean, what do we really know? This asshole, I mean, Brian Higgins is completely lying. So he's saying nothing about what really happened. And that's why I said I'd like to see the grand jury testimony, because he had a queen for a day deal with the feds. And if this is the bullshit he gave them, I mean, that would be pretty insane, because this is just totally fabricated. Yeah, that's a great point. Beth sends $2 and said, is there any world where the Alberts don't have security cams? Yeah, in fact, when he testifies about it, Brian Albert, he says that they had just gotten him, I think, for Christmas, security cams, and that he hadn't had time to put them up yet. So he's asked about it. And I agree with you. I mean, the very first thing, and most of you probably know this because I've said it many times, the reason that I got interested in this case, right before the first trial, my sister was like, hey, Sam, there's this case in Massachusetts. You really got to learn about this case. You got to just check it out. Seriously, you got to check it out. That was like on a Thursday. So she's like, this weekend, go home, look into these whatever podcasts, I forget which ones they were, go do like a deep dive and go down the rabbit hole and check this case out. And the thing that got me immediately was learning about the character of Brian Albert. And I mean, learning for like 5 minutes, right? Oldest of 7, big shot, police officer, undercover, bounty hunter, special police force, right? The whole thing, learning about his character. And then finding out that he doesn't come outside and pretends like he didn't hear anything going on his front lawn that morning. There is absolutely no way, no world. And then when I found out that that was his parents' house, that's not even just that's his parents' house, not his house, not his family. That's not a house like he bought after he had kids. That's his mom and dad's house that he grew up in. When I heard that, it's impossible that Brian Albert did not know whenever like a bunny rabbit stepped foot on that property, whether it's because of a security cam or because of just his general awareness, because of who he is. Like, this is a guy who's got eyes and ears everywhere, right? Like, it's built into his DNA. There is no world where Brian Albert does not know what's going on day or night at any time on that property, period, full stop. That's it. End of discussion. So when I actually found out that he was literally saying that the words coming out of his own mouth were, I didn't hear anything, I slept through it. This is before I knew about butt dials or any of that. There's just no way. That's not possible. So that was what got me interested in this case. It's fundamentally impossible that Brian Albert did not hear anything that morning. It's not possible. So you could say it's because of security cams. I would believe that 100%. One way or the other, because Brian Albert is old school. That's the other thing. Like, he's older. He's probably 10 years my senior. So, or just about. And so I know that, I know those guys. Like, I grew up with a lot of people that were about that age, 10 years older than me. A lot of my friends were 10 years older in that cohort, like that, like, you know, age range. There's a big difference, by the way, between like the kids that were in high school 10 years before me, like the mid to late 80s, and then my group, which was like mid to late 90s. Huge difference, because we had like the whole Seattle grunge people that came in, and Nirvana, the whole thing just like switched pretty dramatically right before me. So those guys were like the big hair and like the Def Leppard, like they were like the full on like 80s people, right? And my group was like the first generation to kind of buck that current a bit. And, you know, also rap music came in, whatever. So that's those guys. And those guys have eyes in the back of their head, like before security cams. So I could see it either way. Like I could see Brian Albert knowing that property, knowing every sound, knowing like every like little, you know, like water heater noise that is made in that house, right? He grew up in that house. So like I could see it either way. I could see it just because he's got eyes in the back of his head, or because he has security cams. And either way, there's no universe where Brian Albert doesn't know what's going on the lawn, period. That's it, right? So the fact that he claims that is like, it's impossible. And that was the very first reason that I said, you know what? I am on board, because whatever's going on here is totally bullshit. They're lying without a doubt. Yay, Twigs gifted 5 memberships. Thank you so much, Twigs. That's awesome. That's wonderful. So kind of you. You guys are the greatest. You really, really are. Kid Jerk sends $5, says, keep doing what you do and keep Vince in line. Peace. Peace right back to you, Kid Jerk. I try, you know, Vince is tough. Vince is tough to keep in line. I'm working on it. You know, it's always a work with Vince. It's always a work in progress. I think generally Vince means well. You know, we have some work to do, but I will try. I promise. All right, we're going to get a little bit further along here. Let's see if we can't get out of this house, and then we will wrap it up. And before I forget to say this, 2 things. I know I've been saying it for a few weeks, but it's definitely coming. Vince and I are going to work on finalizing, like cleaning up the little last minute issues. We are going to be introducing, hopefully Monday, of call-in elements, so people can actually call in, and we'll still be in the chat, so we can still do what we're doing now, but also add a phone situation, so if people want to call in, they can, which I'm so excited about, because that's what I've always wanted. My dream is to do like the call-in. I'm like a radio person. I was born and raised with call-in sports talk radio, so I've always wanted to be able to do, people can call in. So I'm super excited about that. And don't forget to take the poll. So we right now are reevaluating whether the 10 p.m. time slot is best on Wednesday nights. So if you have a preference that's different from Wednesday at 10 p.m., there's a poll on my YouTube page. You can go to the community page or just go straight to the wall on my YouTube channel and take the poll. Let me know if there's a better time, what time you think is better. And we are trying to figure it out to see if we can't accommodate everybody and maybe make it a little early, because it's just, you know, I like doing it 10. I like having to have a whole day, but I'm a night owl, and it's probably not best for my mental health, because then it screws my whole sleep cycle up. So, you know, I like doing it late, but I realize I probably should bump it up earlier. All right. So now that I've said all that, we'll get a little bit farther and then we will call it. Let's see.
At any point in time, did you see either of them inside the house or outside of the house or around the house or anywhere around 34 Fairview?
Who are we talking about?
Absolutely not. No.
And at any point in time,
no.
Hold on.
Did you see Mr. O'Keefe and Miss Reed? At any point in time, did you see either of them inside the house or outside of the house or around the house or anywhere around 34 Fairview Road?
Absolutely not. No.
And at any point in time over the course of the evening, what, if any, communication or text or anything did you send to either of those two people while you were at the house on Fairview?
While I was at the house, I think I shot a text just to John. Where are you? I think that's what it was.
Wow.
And if you recall,
Whoa, wait, time out. All right. So, this is really bizarre. So this is deception, and we know he shoots that text. So what's deceptive here? Let's go back. So first he says, did you see them in and around the house, right? And he says, absolutely not, no. Now, we understand why he's doing that. We know he's trying to be really clear and, matter of fact, absolutely not, no. What he doesn't know that we know is that this is a defensive posture, right? So people that are not hiding stuff and are not attempting to look innocent can say no. It's enough to just say no, because they know that they have the truth on their side. So if I know I'm telling the truth, there's not a need to say, absolutely not, no, never, right? That's why never is such a deceptive word a lot of the time. Because the most of the time, not always, most of the time, people that use it are using it because they're defensive, because they know that what they did, that they did it, right? So it's like a way to try to make themselves seem innocent. It's like a plea to believe them. This falls into that category. But what comes next is even worse. So let's hear the next thing that comes out of his mouth here.
Where are you? I think that's what.
Did you send to either of those two people?
Wait, let me hear the whole thing.
Over the course of the evening, what, if any, communication or text or anything did you send to either of those two people while you were at the house on Fairview?
While I was at the house, I think I shot a text just to John. Where are you? I think that's what it was.
Interesting. So you'll note that he clarifies, while I was at the house, I think I shot a text just to John. Where are you? I think, right? That's what it was. Okay. So he's clarifying.
And if you recall, did you ever get a response to that text?
No, there was no response.
So after you left the waterfall, when you left the waterfall, was Mr. O'Keefe and Miss Reed, the defendant, still there?
I can't say 100% no.
But after you left the waterfall,
Wait a minute. So this is an interesting answer, because okay. Lally is asking about after he left the waterfall. But the way he asks, it sounds like at first he's asking about 34 Fairview. And so when Brian Higgins answers this, I'm not sure that he knows exactly which of those two Lally's asking about. So this is a little bit of a confusing question. He's now jumping from the house to the waterfall. Lally.
Just to John.
Or text or anything did you send to either of those two people while you were at the house on Fairview?
While I was at the house, I think I shot a text just to.
Yeah, so while I was at the house, I think I shot a text just to John. So this is incredibly problematic. While I was at the house, I think I shot a text just to John. And that's interesting because as far as we know, he did only send a text to John. But if that's not where the deception is coming from, then why is this coming across as deceptive? So I wonder if the reason why this is deception from his perspective is because of the implication. So the implication here that Lally is trying to pull out is that I was only interested in John, right? Because if I'm saying that, well, yep, I just shot a text to John, then the assumption is I wasn't concerned about Karen. I was only concerned about John. That's the deceptive part. Because on its face, that's true. There wasn't a text sent to Karen at that time. It was just to John. So there's no reason for this to come across as deceptive, but it does, which tells us something very important about the intent of this particular text. That this text went to John, that part is true, but he thinks there's something about the message that, you know, he doesn't want us to know, right? So this is deceptive. And I think it's because of the way Lally's framing the question to make it seem like, well, I wasn't really interested in Karen. Who cares about her? I only cared about John because he's the one I shot the text to.
John, where are you? I think that's what it was.
And if you recall, did you ever get a response to that text?
No, there was no response.
And, you know, quickly, if you think about this, my God, this poor jury, could you imagine? Like this jury, what the hell do you make of this? If you're sitting on this jury, you're hearing this for the first time. What do you make of this? I mean, this poor jury had no chance to get any clue about what was going on. The only thing I think that comes across clearly from a juror's perspective through trial one is that the police were a disaster, right? Like the only clear message that comes through, whether it's from the defense or from the prosecution, okay, Michael Proctor, Yuri Buchanan, the video, the inverted video, like that stuff, just like the incompetence, the ineptitude, the unprofessionalism, like clearly the police screwed up. Aside from that, I mean, Trooper Paul, right? So when you start thinking back to trial one, I don't know what you could possibly make of these witnesses. Now, I'd love to talk to the 4 jurors that absolutely refused to go along with, with anything that the other 9 people were probably pushing for. Thank God for those 4 people. Because I would love to know, like, and I'm sure they've probably all done a lot of research, right? Like Victoria George, we know, was involved in the second trial. So a lot of these folks, I'm sure, have more information now because they were so interested in the case. But you have to wonder, like sitting there, could you make anything out from this trial? Because these guys are, who knows? Who knows what you'd be thinking if this was the first time you knew anything about this case and your first exposure was sitting through 62 witnesses like this? I mean, what could you possibly really take away from these testimonies?
So after you left the waterfall, when you left the waterfall, was Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. Reed, the defendant, still there?
I can't say 100% no.
But after you left the waterfall, at any point in time, did you speak to, text with, or
this is a weird
communicate
question.
in any way, shape, or form, or see in any way, shape, or form either Mr. O'Keefe or Ms. Reed?
Well, again, the only person I shot the text to while I was at the house was John. But after I left the waterfall, I never saw John O'Keefe or the defendant again.
Right. And
now, when you...
I mean, I don't know how you could possibly miss this, I mean, Karen Reed is sitting right in front of you. Like, how you could possibly not realize that this is just I mean, it's like on its face, false. He just said, I had never seen John O'Keefe or the defendant again. And he's saying that with her in his peripheral vision. So, you know, how you say this and don't realize that, or even think, by the way, to correct it. Because a person who's aware and honest would have immediately realized, oh, well, that's not true. She's right here. But again, the whole point of Brian Higgins' testimony after the waterfall is to obfuscate the truth. The whole point. That's all he's doing. He is not there to tell us anything at all that is true. Nothing. He is there, just like with Liz, you know, building the brick wall. He is literally there to wall off the truth. And everything he says is designed to do exactly that, is to not tell us the truth. It's entirely defensive. I mean, maybe the most defensive I've ever seen. Normally, when we see people testify, even people that are deceptive, most of the time they're giving us like truth mixed in with deception. So I'm not going to reference the Koenig case. It's fresh in my mind. I won't reference it as to not be triggering for folks. But most of the time, what we're going to see is somebody trying to be as honest as they can. So even when they, you know, people don't want to lie. They really don't. So most of the time, they're going to try to bring in as much of the truth of a sequence of events as they can, and then fill in with deception. They try, because we really do hate lying. But this is life and death for Brian Higgins. It's life and death. So there is no playing games. There is no folding in truth. It is just outright walled off the truth, give you as much rehearsed bullshit as I possibly can, and lie to you straight out. I never saw the defendant or John O'Keefe again. Oh, but she's sitting in front of me. So, whoops. And you'd have to be a really astute person to be able to catch it, because of course we all want to do the thing that these guys count on. We all want to go, well, we know what he means, but that's exactly how people deceive us. They deceive us by counting on us doing that, which is why now I'm so painfully aware to not do that, because I see everybody does it. I mean, I want to do it. It's my instinct to do it too. And I literally have to be mindful of it consciously to catch it, to not do it, because it's, you know, it's what we do. But it's what assholes like this man count on us doing. And that's why we can't do it at all. Okay, let's finish this out. We're getting very close. We're just like a minute away.
Left from the residence, and again, you're not sure what time that was?
Between 12:30 and 1 o'clock.
And do you recall who amongst the group was still at the house at the time you left?
I think I was probably the first person to leave.
So all of the other people that you've described
Probably
were in the house when you exited from the house?
Yes.
Now, you indicated earlier that you're familiar with Mr. Albert and his family to some extent, correct?
Yes.
You've been to his house for a graduation party for his twins, correct?
Yes.
Through that, at any point in time prior to this date, did you become aware or familiar with Brian Albert's nephew, Colin Albert?
I know the name, and I know that he is one of the sons of Chris Albert.
You familiar with what he looks like?
If he walked in here right now, I wouldn't know.
You would not know?
No.
Yeah, so that's
and beyond
evasive.
People that you've described as far as seeing at 34 Fairview Road, fair to say you don't recall anybody being introduced or identified as Colin Albert?
No.
Now you exit from the home through the breezeway door and go over to your vehicle, is that right?
Yes.
And from the time that you would enter the home to the time now that you're exiting from the home, what, if any, change did you note as far as the weather?
Just that the weather was getting worse. The snow was picking up.
Just
as
that.
As far as the accumulation that you had described before, as far as you could still see the blacktop and all that when you left the waterfall, What was it like when he came out of the house?
Again, I think that the streets that weren't being traveled, there was snow on them. There was coverage.
There's snow on
And
them.
as far as
All right, so we'll
the
pause there. So just note that when you hear people saying again, I know that he is referencing the statement that he made when he first got to the house. But whenever you see that, it is a way that people naturally try to increase the credibility of what they're saying. Well, see, I said it before, so now I'm saying it again, right? It's funny because I always said it because I was afraid I was being redundant and I wanted people to be aware of that redundancy. But I've since learned that when we're watching people testify and they're being deceptive, that it's a way that they validate their own statements by trying to say, yep, see, I'm saying the same thing again, so it must be more likely to be true, which is, I guess it's a thing. I mean, it's a little crazy to me though. So, all right, let's read. Make sure I've got everybody here. Do I got y'all? Let me make sure. I think. Oh, okay. So, Nephthisness says $5. Sends what made her leave? Something did. OJO incident. I meant the girl of the truck pickup. What made her leave? Something did. Officer John O'Keefe incident. I meant the girl of the truck pickup. So are we talking about Heather? That's what we're talking about. Julie? Well, Julie doesn't leave, right? Julie doesn't leave, I think, right? Julie doesn't leave. So, I mean, I will say this. There's always been a question for me about whether, there's still a question. And this is something that I could probably spend 6 months on by itself. It's a very specific question, but it's important. That is, does the incident with John happen before Julie Nagel walks out and says to her brother, she's going to stay? That's a question that I still have not fully answered, because every time I think I have, something gets activated, somebody says something in their testimony that makes me doubt it. For example, she winds up making her brother sit out there for 10 minutes, longer than you would expect. That's one. Second, Jen McCabe shows signs of deception at this point. They all want to make a point to tell us that she asked her brother to come inside. That's something that she has to make sure we hear. All of them do. Now, that doesn't seem super important unless it is. And because those people are all on the defensive, they want us to think, see, you have nothing to hide. But it stands out because you're only going to tell us that if you want us to think you have nothing to hide, right? There are other things too. I mean, that's the short list. There are other reasons. It's funny because I haven't brought this up yet. This is the first time I'm ever saying this out loud. So I have used Heather's testimony as evidence of honesty because the vast majority of what she says is. And the last time that I did that, I continued to watch beyond what I had used, to show examples of somebody being honest. And when I did, I caught something that seemed to me to be deceptive, and you'll never guess what it was. And this is completely by accident. Like, I wasn't looking for it. I just happened to be like running the tape a little longer than I normally would have. And the thing that I flagged as sounding deceptive was when she's asked about if she saw John. If she saw John in the car. or standing outside of the car or moving towards the house. I can't remember the details now. But I remember thinking it and being like, oh no, you can't be serious. Like, this can't be happening. This woman who I've been holding up as like the model of honesty. And now 5 seconds after I show the clip of that, now it looks like she's lying about the most important thing of all. And so I just kind of left it for now. I figured I'll get back to it eventually. So I don't know. I have to really study it closely, but it's not impossible. And it's pretty freaking important, right? Could you imagine? So I'm not sure. I think that what I will say about Heather Maxon and the other Nagel brother, why am I blanking on his name? It's late. I'm tired. Julie's oldest brother, I guess, because there's Sam Nagel. He's the clown that stands outside of D&E and is touching Meredith. We all know who Meredith is, Aiden's ex, the reverse cowgirl, cocaine, that Meredith. Yeah. So that's Sam Nagel, who doesn't really look anything like them. So it's kind of hard to imagine that that's their brother. And then there's Ryan Nagel, and that's the older one who testified at both Karen Reed trials. And, his statement comes across as honest, relatively impartial, despite the fact that he's clearly is on that team. So it's pretty interesting. If that's true, that's enormously significant. But it's also part of the reason why I'm having such a hard time letting go of the fact that he walked in the house. So frustrating. Proctor got waffled, sends $2. Grand jury testimony has to be mind-blowing. You would hope so, right? I mean, I hope so. I hope so. Wouldn't you just love to know, like, what some of these federal prosecutors know? Like what Adam Deitch probably knows? And how scary do you think Adam Deitch is to the McAlberts? It's got to be the scary. He has got to be terrifying to them. Absolutely terrifying. I mean, that guy is like the worst thing that could possibly happen to them, because they know that if their people are out, I mean, they are just screwed, right? Totally screwed. These people, they want to put themselves out there as like honest, upstanding citizens, and they want to make us all seem crazy. But they can never, they can't ever come up with the goods. They can't ever show us the proof of their innocence. And it wouldn't be hard. If I really was being accused of being a murderer or associated with a murderer, I would give you like my entire phone record. I'd be like, here it is. I'd have like a website of all of my stuff so that you could go look at it. Not even because I need to prove my innocence, but just because, like, if I have nothing to hide, I would be like, screw it. It's not that I need you to believe me. It's that I'm innocent. And like, yeah, I would rather people think I'm innocent because I am. But I probably wouldn't have voodoo dolls of Karen Reed and Turtle Boy. Probably wouldn't be like spying on Aiden Carney and like chasing him around with like another group of women to see where he's going and what he's doing. I probably wouldn't give a shit so much about what he's doing and what he's saying and who he's talking to. And, it's just rich. It's just rich coming from that group of people. It really, really is. Twig says, I'm the first caller. I call shotgun. You better be. I am so excited about the call in. I cannot wait. You better be. You absolutely better be. And then Got a Bad Feeling sends another super sticker. Got a Bad Feeling. Thank you so much for being here. Everybody, thank you guys. You've been with me 3 hours and 18 minutes. Don't forget to hit the like button if you haven't already. Thank you for being here. I actually think this has been really productive. I have never realized what a lying sack of shit this man really is, and how deceptive every word he utters about his presence at 34 Fairview on that night, every word, not a single utterance has even a thread of truth in it. Every word. I've never seen that before. I don't know how I missed it. So I thank you guys, because sitting here with you tonight, I saw it. I saw it for the first time. I've never seen it before. I mean, obviously, I've seen this testimony, I don't know how many times, probably 30, 40. I mean, I've seen it. I've gone through it. I've heard it. I never realized that nothing he says about his time at 34 Fairview is true at all. Like, even a little bit. So much so that if we didn't know he was there, I would have a really hard time believing he was there. Like, if it wasn't such a bad decision to put himself there, I would say, hey, maybe he wasn't there. Could there be some other reason why he would place himself in such a bad position? Well, the answer is no. So, because who would do that, right? Who would ever put themselves in a position to be involved with the murder of another police officer who was a friend, and by the way, whose girlfriend he was interested in stealing from him? Whether he says it that way or not, that's at the end of the day what was on his mind. I mean, remember one thing about Brian Higgins. He stops talking to John O'Keefe altogether. Now, John stops talking to him too, but having said that, John gives him the warmest greeting of anybody in that bar, which tells me that John had an awareness of what was going on, that John maybe didn't know about him and Karen, the extent of it, but that had enough presence of mind to want to make Brian Higgins feel okay about whatever was going on, right? Because the first thing he does when he walks in is like, hey, and he gives him this really big warm greeting to try to like smooth out the fact that they haven't been talking. In my mind, that's what I see. Now, maybe it's because of Karen, maybe it's not, but either way, John was trying to make it known to Brian Higgins that they were cool, at least at the start of the night. Now, that could have changed, because what we now know is that by the end of the night, once those lights are on, as soon as the lights are actually on, if you haven't seen this, by the way, if you haven't studied it, go to the waterfall video. I have it up on my wall. Go to the waterfall video. Go to the very end, the last 15 minutes when the lights go on, because you can see much better. As soon as like the last call and the lights go on, in the bar to make sure, try to get everybody out, you can see their faces. You can see the nuances of everybody so much more clearly. Also, there's less people in the bar, and you'll see Karen and Brian Higgins interacting. And you'll also see John is clear line of vision at the whole thing. Now, he doesn't appear to be staring at them, but as soon as him and Brian Albert and Cole walk out, he does seem to get his own boxing groove on. So I don't know what to make of that. Maybe it's nothing, but I would definitely check it out if you have not seen it. It's pretty freaking interesting. And Nephthesness, you have to tell me if I'm saying this wrong. Oh my God, so sorry. Yes, Nagel stayed, but she had wanted to leave, exactly, and changes her mind quick. That's right. And Nicole talks about Nagel's 180. You rock. I wasn't clear. No, and this is the thing. You're pointing out something very important, because I don't think that we know. And I never really stressed this enough, because I think it is a really serious question. There's so much information in Julie Nagel's testimony. And I know I keep saying this. Right before I got distracted a few months ago, I was looking first at Julie Nagel and then at Sarah Levinson, and I still have to go back to both. And what we learned from Julie Nagel, there's a ton. I mean, she gives it up. Julie Nagel is such a bad liar that she winds up telling us the truth. I mean, she does. She gives up a lot of information that we're not supposed to have. You have to pay very close attention, and you have to put your bias aside. It took me a long time to be able to do that with her, because I just kept putting on top my own version of what she was saying. And if I stop doing that and I just take each word that she says, like word for word, there's a lot of information that she gives up. One of the things that she insists, is that John O'Keefe gets to that house before her brother. Okay. And the only way that she could know that definitively is if she sees John O'Keefe in that house before she goes out to see her brother and Heather and Ricky. That's why what you're asking about is so important. Because if that's true, if she sees John go into that house, that's the end of the question about whether John goes into the house. And right now, that's the strongest evidence for me because she is so sure. She's so sure she's correcting Adam Lally because Adam Lally knows that John and Karen pull up only, seconds before her brother because they pull up right behind John and Karen, right? Maybe like 30 seconds to a minute max, but it happens in close succession. And not only Lally, but like this is something that gets brought into both trials, right? Now, Julie Nagel doesn't testify in the second trial, but the proximity, the timeline between when Julie comes out and when Karen and John pull up is brought into both trials. So this question is actually a really, really important one to what is going on and to whether or not we actually know if John goes into the house. Because if Julie Nagel is that sure that John and Karen got there before her brother, there's really only one way that she could know that. And it's if John O'Keefe walks into that house and she saw it. And that is what really started to change my mind about the fact that John goes into the house. That one fact alone was so convincing because she's so certain. Well, how could she be that certain? How could she be that certain unless she saw John? To me, for Julie Nagel to be so sure she's actually correcting Adam Lally, that's a really important detail. So be on the lookout for that. Check it out. And if you haven't sat and really looked at Julie Nagel and her testimony play by play, it's important. It's really interesting. Twig says, Sam, look at the Kit Martin case. Oh, I will. Hopefully this isn't like a loophole lawyer recommendation though, because I don't know if I have the stomach for another one of those, but I will check it out. Thank you for the recommendation. I love it. All right, you guys, that's it for me. Everybody, you're the best. I love you guys. Truly, I do. I am forever grateful for you, Denise. You truly are the greatest moderator in the whole world. Everybody, all of you, enjoy the rest of your early Thursday morning. Don't forget to take the poll so that we can figure out what the best time for everybody going forward is. And I will hope to see you guys. Don't forget Monday for Monday Nooner, and we hope to have our phone feature up and running. And hopefully I see you next Wednesday at whatever time we decide to do it at. Everybody, good night. You are the best.
It is the defense counselor's duty to protect the rights of the individual, as it is the prosecution's duty to uphold and defend the laws of the state. Justice for all. Only we have a problem here.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me weep. I love everything. Fire spreading all around my room. My world's so bright, it's hard to breathe, but that's alright. Hush.
This is me reminding you to like this video, comment, subscribe, like this video.